Chapter 636. The figures scattered, but the few of them did not move. In the blink of an eye, the group of people had completely dispersed, retreating at least tens of meters away. Man Hu, Yan Zhuixing, Hu Yuntian, the remaining three guards, Mo Xiaojun and Yi Qing. The eight of them looked at the two halves of the corpse. The intestines were scattered all over the ground, and the blood-red liquid was still flowing. The few of them still could not believe that this was true. An early-stage crossing tribulation cultivator was killed by Yu Qianzhou just like that. Among the eight of them, Yu Qianzhou coldly snorted. He dragged a black saber that was even bigger than a person and indifferently turned around to clean up the 10 pots of blood orchids on the stall. It seemed that his business could no longer continue. Hu Yuntian suddenly roared, "Yu Qianzhou, how dare you kill my Cloud Palace disciple?" He was originally ordered to come and pull Yu Qianzhou into the Cloud Palace. He did not expect such a thing to happen. Before he even started to pull people in, they had already become enemies. Yu Qianzhou turned around and put his saber on his shoulder. Behind him, tens of cyan flying swords rotated around. He expressionlessly stared at the corpse on the ground and said, "I have killed many people. This is not the first time I have killed a Cloud Palace disciple. Furthermore, you overestimated yourself and dared to come out and shout at me. If you are not courting death, then what are you doing? Do you think I am easy to bully?" Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu looked at each other. They both had the same thought. This guy is a complete lunatic. If you do not give a satisfactory explanation today, don't even think of leaving here alive. Hu Yuntian angrily said. The three guards beside him all flew out with their flying swords. They floated in front of them, waiting for an opportunity. Mo Xiaojun did not say anything and also released his flying sword. Yi Qing also followed suit. He had seen Senior use style today. That was called clean and neat. He even killed a Cloud Palace disciple without hesitation. He did not expect that he would be able to fight alongside Senior Yu today. This has nothing to do with the two of you. Scram. Yu Qianzhou turned around and shouted at the two. The two did not dare to disobey and slowly retreated. A satisfactory explanation? What a joke. It was clearly your subordinate who threatened me first, and now you want me to give you a satisfactory explanation? What if you're satisfied but I'm not? Yu Qianzhou sneered, how about this? Let's cut the crap. No one will be satisfied just by talking. Why don't you and I fight one-on-one? We'll fight to the death. Whoever dies will be unlucky. What do you think? Wow. The crowd was boiling. The atmosphere was pushed to the climax by Yu Qianzhou's words. It was 2F** King direct. Everyone was rubbing their fists. There was going to be a good show to watch. Hu Yuntian was choked by this sentence. His senior brother Chu Dingfang had died at the hands of Yu Qianzhou in Daong Kingdom. In terms of ability, he was slightly inferior to Chu Dingfang. How could he dare to accept the challenge? However, he had already spoken. If he did not accept it, he would not only lose face for himself but also for his father, Hu Changshou. Cornucopia wasn't small, but it wasn't big either. What happened here immediately spread. Just as Hu Yuntian's expression was uncertain, someone came to help him. Mu Lianqiu arrived quickly with 10 law enforcement guard disciples and landed between Yu Qianzhou and Hu Yuntian. In just a short while, a large group of people appeared silently in the air. The people below raised their heads to take a look, and all of them immediately fell silent out of fear. Impressively, the various deity transformation stage lords had arrived. Mu Lianqiu, you came at the right time. Hu Yuntian pointed at Yu Qianzhou and said, he killed my Cloud Palace disciple in public. This is your world commerce's territory. I hope the law enforcement guard of Cornucopia will give justice to my Cloud Palace. Bolsh**. Yu Qianzhou pointed the blade directly at Hu Yuntian and said, it was clearly your Cloud Palace who bullied me first, hindered me from doing legal business here and threatened me. I was forced to take action. The eyes of the masses are clear. Everyone saw this. I strongly request the law enforcement guard of Cornucopia to punish evil and punish these bullies. What a sharp-tongued junior. How dare you speak irresponsibly here? Someone suddenly spoke in the air. His voice was not loud, but every word entered everyone's ears. Everyone looked over. A gray-robed old man slowly floated into the air and stared down indifferently. Hu Yuntian was overjoyed when he saw this. It was none other than his father, one of the top 10 experts, a late-stage soul formation cultivator, Hu Changshou. He immediately led the three guards to salute. Yu Qianzhou was not a fool. Without thinking, he knew who it was from their actions. He was about to defend himself, but before he could speak, someone had already spoken. An indistinct voice traveled over. Xianxia, you're so awe-inspiring. Is it appropriate to use it on an early-stage tribulation passing junior? You didn't see what happened with your own eyes. How do you know he's speaking irresponsibly? Isn't he being a little overprotective? The soft voice was like stirring up waves, surging layer by layer and reverberating endlessly in cornucopia. On God of Wealth Peak, Yin Baikong wanted to personally attend the scene, but after hearing this voice he paused and turned back to Ju, saying, "It's not convenient for me to show up. You handle it and keep in touch with me through voice transmission." Ju accepted the order and left. Most of the people below didn't know who the speaker was, but from the voice they knew the speaker was not simple. Otherwise he would not speak to Xianxia like this. Those who knew were slightly shocked. When Lanfeng's words were not false. He was indeed supporting Xianxia. Suddenly 3 people appeared in the air and stood face to face with Xianxia. They were Wen Lanfeng, Lu Yanqing and Nongzhu. When Lanfeng stood in the middle, Xianxia's expression changed. He cupped his hands and squeezed out a smile, saying, "Brother Wen, sister Lu Yanqing is also here, Nongzhu." He glanced at Bing Qingzi in the air not far away. Yin Baikong did not even come. Among the 3, only Lu Yanqing nodded slightly. The other 2 looked down and saw that Xianxia was carrying a huge black saber. It was as if he was going to attack a city and fight a war. He was truly overbearing. Lu Yanqing glanced at the corpse at his feet and frowned slightly. When Xianxia saw that he had 3 backers, he immediately winked at Hu Yuntian, wondering if he should seize the opportunity to kill this guy. Hu Yuntian's face was slightly pale, knowing that he would not be able to get away with it today. Mu Lianqiu and the others who were sandwiched between the 2 looked at each other, knowing that this matter was no longer up to them to handle. At this moment, Bing Qingzi flashed to Xianxia's side. He knew that it would be inappropriate if he did not come out. Yin Baikong did not come. If he hid at the side and watched Xianxia alone, this alliance would become a big joke and he would also lose face. It's normal for there to be some friction between the younger generation. There's no need to muster a large force. Bing Qingzi first said some words to smooth things over, then turned his head and shouted, "Ju, how long are you going to wait? This is your World Chamber of Commerce's territory. Don't tell me you want to watch the show instead of coming out to mediate?" A figure flashed over. Ju awkwardly bowed to them and said, "Greetings, seniors. May I know what happened?" "Don't talk nonsense." Bing Qingzi pointed down and said, "Cornucopia's law enforcement guards are down there. You can ask them yourself. If this matter is not handled fairly and something happens, you will be responsible for the consequences." Yin Baikong did not want to offend anyone and hid. How could Bing Qingzi let him have his way? He immediately pushed the conflict over. Xianxia nodded knowingly. Ju smiled bitterly. There was no justice to speak of in this matter. He would offend whoever he made suffer. However, he had no choice. After all, the World Chamber of Commerce was the owner of this place. Hence, he braced himself and cupped his hands at them. "Seniors, please wait a moment. I will go down and take a look first." He went down in a flash and glanced at Xianxia, who was carrying a big saber. He thought to himself, "Why did you come out to set up a stall? Aren't you looking for trouble?" He then asked Mu Lianqiu in a deep voice, "What exactly is going on?" Mu Lianqiu bowed and said, "I have just arrived and have not figured out the cause of the matter." Even if he knew, he could not say it clearly. Otherwise, not only would he be embarrassed, his master would also be embarrassed. He would definitely punish him when he returned. The best outcome for this matter was to let it go unsettled. Ju nodded and looked at the people causing trouble on both sides. He said sternly, "How dare you cause trouble in Cornucopia? Explain the matter clearly. Otherwise, no matter who is behind you, you will be severely punished." It sounded like he was not bending the law for personal gain. When the surrounding ordinary cultivators heard this, they were in awe. The World Chamber of Commerce was indeed the World Chamber of Commerce. They were not afraid of power. However, to those soul formation experts in the air, they were well aware that it would be strange if this matter could be explained clearly. Ju was clearly trying to smooth things over. By saying such words, he was protecting the World Chamber of Commerce's face and also letting the matter go unsettled. Swish. The big saber in Xianxia's hand was stabbed into the ground. The green flying sword on his back flashed into his sleeve. He raised his finger and said to Hu Yuntian and the rest, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Even Man Hu and Yan Zhuixing were counted. He then cupped his hands at Xikongju and said, Senior Xikong, there is no need to explain this matter. There are 6 of them and only one of me. Anyone with a discerning eye can tell who is bullying who. They are clearly taking advantage of their power to bully others. Senior Xikong, you have to uphold justice for me. I was only setting up a small stall here, but their group came to cause trouble. This guy lying on the ground even threatened me, so I had no choice but to kill him. What does it have to do with us? Man Hu and Yan Zhuixing's expression changed. This guy was pestering endlessly and actually dragged the 2 of them into this. However, Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshe were both present. Both parties were allies. If they publicly said that they weren't on the same side, what would others think? There would be suspicions of being afraid of trouble. The one who would be the most embarrassed would probably be Bing Qingzi. Yu Qianqiu, don't talk nonsense here. Hu Yuntian said angrily, it was clearly you who spoke rudely first. You were also the one who killed him when there was a disagreement. You still dare to frame us. I spoke rudely first? Yu Qianqiu sneered, it seems like I have always been polite. Why don't you tell me what offensive words I've said? You. Hu Yuntian was at a loss for words. Yu Qianqiu smiled contemptuously, can't say it right? Let me say it for you. I clearly said that I am currently doing business and we can slowly chat when I have time. If you are not buying anything, then please move aside and don't hinder my business. Very courteous words. Could it be that these words are also called rude words? You guys are bullying others with your power. Chapter 637. At this point, Yu Qianqiu angrily pulled out the big black blade from the ground. He waved the blade twice and pointed it at Hu Yuntian's nose. Senior Xikong, the truth is in front of us. Hurry up and capture these evildoers and punish them severely. Don't let them escape. Looking at his impatient look, it was as if he wanted Xikongju's help to capture them. Xikongju couldn't help but roll his eyes. What you said is the truth. You want to capture them? In the air, a fatty dressed in blue hugged his belly as he laughed. This person was none other than Pei Fong. Actually, there were many people who wanted to laugh. Nongzhu was one of them. However, she forced herself not to laugh out loud. The corner of Wen Lanfeng's mouth curled into a smile. Hu Yuntian was so angry that he almost became muddle-headed. He immediately roared, Who said we were going to run? If you're not going to run, then plead guilty obediently and save us the trouble. Yu Qianqiu waved his blade at Xikongju and the rest. In the blink of an eye, it became us. It seemed like they were going to carry out the law together. Xikongju could tell that Hu Yuntian cultivated under Hu Changshe's protection. Usually everyone would give in to him. No one dared to talk back to him. He could be unreasonable, but he wasn't good at talking. In the end, he met Yu Qianqiu today. It seemed like he was going to be muddle-headed from anger. If he allowed Yu Qianqiu to continue, Hu Yuntian would definitely plead guilty and submit to the law. This was not the result that Yu Qianqiu wanted. Xikongju coughed and said, Hu Yuntian, are Yu Qianqiu's words true or false? He was reminding Hu Yuntian to explain himself. It was useless to keep talking to Yu Qianqiu. The matter wasn't even clear. If he talked about pleading guilty, wouldn't he be looking for trouble? Hu Yuntian. Yu Qianqiu pointed with his blade again and quickly snatched the topic. He shouted, If you have the ability, swear to the heavens that what I just said was false. Hu Yuntian was at a loss for words. He really didn't dare to swear an oath, because what Yu Qianqiu said before was indeed true. However, the tone he used when it happened was completely different from the tone he used when he explained it in front of everyone. Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu glanced at each other. This Hu Yuntian might seem smart, but if it wasn't for his father, he wouldn't be able to achieve anything. Idiot. Hu Changshe's face darkened and he immediately scolded, Why do you care what he said? Just talk about yourself. What does it matter if you say black is white? I'm here. What are you afraid of? He just couldn't figure it out. How could a person who usually looked quite shrewd become like this after being angered so casually? After being scolded by his old man, Hu Yuntian suddenly came to his senses. The fury in his eyes gradually calmed down, and he regained his shrewd appearance. He said to Xikongju in a clear voice, Senior Xikong, Yu Qianqiu is talking nonsense. Not a single word is true. It is a fact that he killed people in cornucopia. Everyone saw it. Please punish him severely, Senior. These two completely different reactions were because everyone could tell that he was being guided. But this was exactly what Xikongju hoped for. Xikongju tilted his head and asked, "Yu Qianqiu, Hu Yuntian said that everything you said was a lie. What else do you have to say?" Yu Qianqiu raised his head and looked at Hu Changshou in the sky, then looked at Hu Yuntian, and revealed a mocking expression of exasperation at Hu Changshou's failure to meet his expectations. He shook his head and sneered, "This person is already shameless to the point of lying with his eyes wide open. What else do I have to say? If I continue talking, it will just be a result of not acknowledging each other. It's simply a waste of saliva. Senior Xikong, why don't you be more direct?" Xikongju let out a no, and his eyes flickered as he asked, "How to be more direct?" Yu Qianqiu stared at Hu Yuntian and sneered, causing Hu Yuntian's hair to stand on end. Suddenly he saw the blade in his hand pointing at him and said, "Hu Yun, and I'll still say the same thing. There's no meaning in arguing with your glib tongue. Why don't you and I fight one-on-one and we won't rest until one of us is dead? Whoever dies will be unlucky. How about it?" The surrounding crowd went into an uproar again. This madman's killing desire was very strong. He was indeed worthy of the title of butcher. It seemed like he really wanted to slaughter Hu Yuntian. If he didn't have the confidence to slaughter Hu Yuntian, he definitely wouldn't keep mentioning about fighting one-on-one. Although no one said it, they actually hoped that Hu Yuntian would accept the challenge. They just treated it as watching the show. In the crowd there was a pair of bright eyes. Yan Yu looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. With the commotion caused, it was impossible for her not to have heard the news. Originally she didn't want to come, but for some reason she still came. Farong Zi and the rest were currently anxiously pacing around the Wen clan's shop. They really wanted to come over and take a look, but before Nongzhu came out he ordered them not to come out. Hu Yuntian was challenged by him again, and his expression was dark and gloomy, showing signs of going berserk. If he still didn't accept the challenge, how would he still have the face to mingle in the cultivation world? Right at this moment Hu Changshou transmitted his voice. "Is your face more important or your life more important? Don't let your imagination run wild and push the problem to Xikongju." Hu Yuntian took a deep breath and cupped his hands towards Xikongju. "Senior Xikong, cornucopia is the territory of the World Commerce Guild. What do you think?" Xikongju decisively rejected. "Cornucopia doesn't allow private fights. I think this matter will be investigated one day. Why don't we put it aside for now and deal with it after the matter is investigated?" Hihi. What if the matter is never investigated clearly? Laughter came from the sky. Pei Fong's fat face shook as he said, "In my opinion, Yu Qianqiu's idea is not bad. Instead of dragging it on, it's better to fight to the death. Once and for all, there won't be any trouble in the future." Hu Changshou and Bing Qingzi swept a cold glance over. Pei Fong was obviously up to no good. The latter met their gaze and smiled indifferently. Anyway, no matter who died, he wouldn't lose anything. It seemed that Hu Yuntian was more likely to die. If he could take the opportunity to attack Hu Changshou, why wouldn't he do it? If Yu Qianqiu died, it would be even better if Wen Lanfeng did something else. Yu Qianqiu naturally knew that this damn fatty was up to no good by fanning the flames, but he really wanted to kill Hu Yuntian while Wen Lanfeng was here. After making up his mind, he sneered, "Hu Yunnan, since private fights aren't allowed in cornucopia, we might as well settle this outside. If you're afraid of me, you might as well bring your 3 guards with you. If you're still afraid." Dao Feng pointed at Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu and said, "It doesn't matter if the 6 of you come at me together. I'll definitely keep you company until death. How about it, do you dare?" When he was still at the nascent soul stage, he dared to fight with those at the end of the crossing calamity stage. Now that he was at the crossing calamity stage, there was nothing to be afraid of. In addition, after experiencing the beauty of the animal play, he believed that killing Hu Yuntian wouldn't be a problem. The reason why he also involved Yan Zhuixing was because he wanted to test his opponent's depth. If possible, he might as well take advantage of Wen Lanfeng's presence to get rid of this trouble in the future. This was simply a naked provocation. 1 against 6, almost forcing Hu Yuntian into a dead end. In the air, Hu Changshou's eyes narrowed. Yu Qianqiu had gone too far and he couldn't help but get angry. Bing Qingzi also seemed to be a little tempted. Hu Yuntian and Man Hu, who were at the end of the crossing calamity stage, were not necessarily no match for Yu Qianqiu. Maybe he could take the opportunity to take revenge for his second disciple. Good. Pei Fong cheered. No wonder you're the #1 expert below the soul-forming stage. You're really brave. He didn't expect that Yu Qianzhou would even involve Bing Qingzi's disciple, so he was naturally excited. Lu Yanqing frowned at Yu Qianzhou's belligerent behavior. When Lan Feng seemed to be a little worried and asked Nongzhu, Yu Qianzhou is only at the early stage of the crossing calamity stage. Won't he underestimate his opponent? Nongzhu replied with a relaxed face, I don't know what he wants to do. But don't worry, he won't do anything that will cause him to lose. Man Hu took a step forward lightly. He also wanted to take the opportunity to take revenge for his junior brother. Unexpectedly, Yan Zhuixing grabbed him and walked to Hu Yuntian's side, saying with a smile, Brother Hu, Senior Pei has already said that Brother Yu is the #1 expert below the soul-forming stage. How can we defeat him so easily? It's not wrong for us to admit defeat to someone who can be praised by Senior Pei. Originally he wanted to let Yu Qianzhou and Hu Yuntian do it. It had nothing to do with him, so he kept his mouth shut and did not answer. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianzhou also involved him in Man Hu. If Hu Yuntian accepted the challenge, it would be inexcusable for them not to fight. Therefore they came forward to help Hu Yuntian, the fool who was outwardly smart but inwardly stupid. In fact, it was not that Yan Zhuixing did not want to fight. In fact, he wanted to try the effect of his demonic power against Yu Qianzhou. The demonic power had been stimulated by Yu Qianzhou's words, and it was running automatically in his body. However, there were too many people watching. The power of the demonic power was extraordinary. Once he fought, he would definitely be exposed. Now that he did not have the ability to protect himself, he had to bear with it. After he got the 7-star blood orchid to improve his cultivation, everything would be easy. Although Hu Yuntian was angry at Yu Qianzhou's arrogance, he was still a little afraid of him. It should be known that the butcher in the cultivation world was famous for killing. Many experts at the final stage of the passing calamity stage had died in his hands. Now that Yan Zhuixing gave him a way out, he smiled calmly and said, Brother Yan is right. Since Senior Pei praised him so much, it's not wrong for us to admit defeat. He waved his hand heroically and said, I admit defeat and stop fighting. Yu Qianzhou was startled. He did not expect that they would admit defeat even after he had said so much. Pei Fong was stunned. He wanted to slap himself. If he had known earlier, he would not have interrupted. Hu Changshou glanced at Yu Qianzhou with a malicious gaze. Then he smiled at Wen Lanfeng and said, Brother Wen, the heroes are here to watch the show. If this matter continues, we as guests will not give face to the host. I think it's better to follow the host's idea and temporarily put this matter aside. We will talk about it after the investigation. What do you think? Although others thought that Yu Qianzhou had to listen to Wen Lanfeng did not think that he could be Yu Qianzhou's master. Just as he was about to use words to evade, he heard Lu Yanqing, who was beside him, say, Isn't it better to solve it peacefully? Why must we fight and kill? Wen Lanfeng was startled. He looked down and said, Yu Qianzhou, since they have admitted defeat, you should also take a step back. Let's talk about this later. Yu Qianzhou was speechless. Without Wen Lanfeng's support, he did not have the ability to kill Hu Changshou's son in front of him. Moreover, there was Bing Qingzi eyeing him covetously. He glanced at Nongzhu, but Nongzhu also shook her head slightly. Damn it. Relying on others to support you is the most unstable thing. In the end, you still have to rely on yourself. Let's wait and see. With a calm face, Yu Qianzhou put away the big black saber. He turned around and walked to the original stall. He took out pots of 7-star blood orchids and shouted to the crowd, selling 7-star blood orchids in large quantities. 200 million per plant. Those who are willing to buy, come quickly. Chapter 638. Everyone could hear the resentment in his voice. The onlookers looked at each other. It seemed that this guy was unhappy that he didn't kill Hu Changshou's son. Hu Changshou's eyes flashed with killing intent. He turned around and disappeared in the air. Hu Yuntian happily said goodbye to Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu and left as well. The 3 guards went to Yu Qianzhou's stall in fear to clean up their colleague's corpse. This guy was so crazy that he didn't even put Hu Changshou in his eyes. They were really worried that he would do something out of line again. The 3 of them buried their heads in collecting the corpse. They didn't even have the courage to look up at Yu Qianzhou. Sikongju took a deep look at Yu Qianzhou and waved his hand at Mu Lianqiu and the others. He led the crowd away and continued to maintain the order of the cornucopia. Seeing that the show had come to an end and that there was nothing to see, the rulers in the air all disappeared. When Lan Feng looked at Nongzhu and smiled bitterly as if saying, "This guy won't bear a grudge against me, right?" The two of them disappeared together with Lu Yanqing. Bing Qingzi's pupils shrank when he saw Yu Qianchou's blood orchid. His eyes flickered and he left. Only Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu didn't leave. Soon, the stalls that were divided by white lines returned to their original appearance. Regardless of whether it was the stall owners or the people lingering there, their gazes were always faintly discernible as they looked at Yu Qianchou, filled with reverence. She had heard many rumors about Yu Qianchou, but this was the first time she had seen him act so domineering. He killed a cultivator in the early stage of tribulation passing just because of a disagreement, and that cultivator was a disciple of the world-famous Cloud Palace. Then he brazenly challenged 6 disciples of the Cloud Palace and Ice Palace in front of everyone, including 2 experts in the late stage of tribulation passing. In the end, the disciples of the Cloud Palace and Ice Palace admitted defeat and retreated. In addition, Pei Fong, an expert in the late stage of spirit severing. Now in everyone's mind, Yu Qianchou was the #1 expert below the spirit severing stage. Mo Xiaojun stood quietly behind Yu Qianchou, his attitude becoming more and more respectful. Niu Yid had appointed them as the leader and he did not disgrace them. Yi Cheng, who was standing at the side, looked at Yu Qianchou with even more admiration. Perhaps it was because of the sense of identity he didn't feel that Yu Qianchou's actions were too arrogant. Instead he thought that Yu Qianchou had won glory for the Chinese cultivation world. In fact, there were many disciples from various sects who had snuck in from the Chinese cultivation world. Unfortunately, they didn't have the chance to get close to Yu Qianchou like Yi Qing did. But it didn't affect their crazy worship of Yu Qianchou at all. Usually they didn't dare to raise their heads here. Suddenly seeing such a figure in the cultivation world of Wuxia, they were simply overwhelmed with emotions, unable to calm down and extremely excited. Was Yu Qianchou arrogant? Not at all. They couldn't wait for Yu Qianchou to be 10,000 times more arrogant. It would be best if he could trample all the countries under his feet. After silently admiring him for a while, they left quietly. They wanted to report what had happened here to the Chinese cultivation world as soon as possible. Not long after, Furong Zi, Enchantress and Amano came running. After Nongzhu went back, seeing that the situation had calmed down, she allowed them to come out. "Are you all right?" The 3 girls asked almost at the same time. "What can happen to me?" When Yu Qianchou saw Furong, the haze on his face turned into a smile and he asked, "What are you doing here? Do you want to help me set up a stall?" "Wow." Zi stared at Xuelon in the stall and exclaimed, "Selling things is such a fun thing. Why didn't you invite me?" Then she crossed the stall excitedly and pushed Yu Qianchou away. She stood on the seller's seat and looked around as if she really hoped that someone would come to buy things from her. She usually spent money to buy things, but this was the first time she tasted selling things. Furong didn't want to be outdone. She stood beside Zi happily, and the two of them shared the feeling of being a stall owner. Yu Qianchou was speechless. These 2 women didn't know how hard it was to earn money, and they thought it was a fun thing. If there was a chance in the future he would let them play every day. Let's see if they would still be in such a good mood. I also want to have a taste of living off a woman. Enchantress stood beside Yu Qianchou with a smile, while Amano Zi and Mo Xiaojun stood side by side, looking around vigilantly. Yi Qing glanced at Furong from time to time, trying to hide the shock in his heart. Although Hibiscus rarely showed her face on the supporting Immortal Island, she had coincidentally seen her once in the Myriad Fragrance Garden. After careful observation, he confirmed that she was the daughter of Wanfen Garden's principal elder, Furong. What he couldn't understand was why Furong and Yu Qianchou were here together. "Senior Yu, this junior still has some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave now." Yi Qing suddenly bowed respectfully to Yu Qianchou. Yu Qianchou smiled and nodded at him. Furong took a glance and realized that this person looked familiar, but she couldn't recognize him, so she didn't think too much about it. After Yi Qing got permission, he quickly walked out of the treasure basin. He wanted to think of a way to send this shocking news back to Fuxian Island. Yan Zhuixing squinted his eyes as he sized up Zi, Furong and Enchantress. His lips curled into a meaningful smile. Yan Zhuixing nodded at Man Hu and the 2 of them walked towards Yu Qianchou's stall. Because of the commotion earlier, the bustling crowd didn't dare to come over, causing the stall to be abnormally quiet. There wasn't even a single person passing by and everyone took a detour. Just as Ze was feeling depressed, she suddenly saw two people walking over. She immediately said excitedly, "Are you buying? How much do you want to buy?" Before she could finish, she realized it was someone she knew from the saber drawing assembly. "Missy, long time no see." Yan Zhuixing cupped his hands. Yu Qianqiu sneered, "Brother Yan, could it be that you want to wreck my stall again?" When Ze heard that they wanted to wreck her stall, she immediately took out her dark purple bamboo rod and was about to make a move. "Brother Yu, it's meaningless to say that." Yan Zhuixing glanced at the blood orchids on the stall and said with a smile, "I saw that Brother Yu's stall was deserted, so I wanted to invite Brother Yu to visit our Ice Palace's shop when you have time. Perhaps there are people who will purchase a large amount of Brother Yu's 7-star blood orchids." Could it be him? Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't show it on his face. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for the reminder, Brother Yan. I will definitely pay a visit." Hehe. Then I won't disturb Brother Yu's business anymore. Goodbye. Yan Zhuixing cupped his hands and left with Man Hu. Yu Qianqiu stared at the two's departing figures with flickering eyes. Suddenly he was pulled back to reality by the noise around him. He saw many people rushing towards the center of the treasure basin. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? The World Commerce Association put up a new signboard and started selling the 7-treasure pill that can help break through the bottleneck of cultivation. Then we have to hurry and take a look. Maybe we loose cultivators will have a chance to buy it and make a huge profit. When the news about the 7-treasure pill came from the crowd, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Young Master Mo, go take a look." Yes. Young Master Mo accepted the order and left. Yu Qianqiu's eyes narrowed into slits as he muttered to himself, "Selling the 7-treasure pill? Yin Baikong, your time of misfortune has come." Ever since he used Niu Yid's identity to sell the last batch of limit-breaking pills to Yin Baikong, he had decided to stop. It wasn't that he didn't want to make more money, but after seeing the various countries and Yin Baikong's secret game, he knew that he wouldn't be able to make a fortune for long. Even though the country's alliance was crushed by Yin Baikong once, none of them were to be trifled with. They definitely wouldn't sit by and watch the World Commerce Association continue like this. To be able to become a lord in the cultivation world, no one was a fool. This was because Yin Baikong's methods of accumulating wealth hadn't reached the point where it hurt everyone's bones. Now wasn't the time to make a move against a colossus like the World Commerce Association. Because some people were still holding a wait-and-see attitude, they were afraid of being attacked by the powerful World Commerce Association. But once Yin Baikong's methods of accumulating wealth hurt everyone's vitality, the various powers wouldn't be able to sit still and would definitely join forces. At first, Yu Qianqiu was curious as to what kind of backing Yin Baikong had to dare to do such a thing. He wasn't a fool. But after thinking about it from his own point of view, he suddenly realized that this old fox was relying on Niu Yid, an immortal from the immortal world. Yin Baikong first boldly threw out several billion, taking the risk of paying first before taking the goods. Then for every 5,000 limit-breaking pills he took the initiative to increase the price by 1 billion high-grade spirit stones, constantly expressing goodwill towards Niu Yid. The reason why he didn't hesitate to cooperate with Niu Yid to do business was to tie Niu Yid's interests tightly with his. Once the various powers retaliated, not only would it hurt his interests, it would also hurt Niu Yid's interests. Yu Qianqiu thought that if he really was Niu Yid who had the strength of an immortal from the immortal world, he definitely wouldn't sit by and watch his interests be harmed. At the crucial moment he would not hesitate to come out and intimidate everyone. After thinking about this, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but smile bitterly. If he hadn't taken the initiative, Yin Baikong would have really used this opportunity to rise up and become an unshakable overlord of the cultivation world. As he thought about it, he couldn't help but admire Yin Baikong's foresight. Ever since he found out that Niu Yid was an immortal from the immortal world, he immediately started to make plans. This kind of courage and foresight made others sigh in admiration. As expected, he was someone who could achieve great things. It wasn't by chance that the World Commerce Company could reach its current state. After understanding the implications, Yu Qianqiu knew that this was the end of his fortune, and it wasn't good for him to meddle any further. Thus he decisively threw out 20,000 limit-breaking pills at once. After making a huge profit, he quickly got rid of Niu Yid's identity. Then he immediately used Yu Qianqiu's identity to send out 5,007 treasure pills that buried the World Commerce Company. He wanted to see how Yin Baikong would clean up this mess. The only thing that made Yu Qianqiu regret was that he didn't think so far ahead. He regretted getting himself involved with Niuyid. In the future there might be some small troubles. Demon Domain Yin Wind Valley. The mountains that stretched for dozens of miles had been sealed off by thick Yin fog for countless years. Raging Yin winds carried Yin phosphorus ghost flames everywhere. Although the environment was harsh, it was a rare cultivation treasure land with abundant Yin qi for the hundreds of thousands of ghost cultivators who lived here. Just as the ghost cultivators were cultivating as usual, a gust of Yin qi that was as thick as ink suddenly erupted violently from the entrance of the 9th netherworld cave. The strong airflow whistled out crazily, and even the nearby rocks that weighed hundreds of kilograms were blown away. In an instant, the dark clouds that covered the sky above the Yin Wind Valley became restless, causing the hundreds of thousands of ghost cultivators to look over. An indescribable feeling of terror spread in the hearts of the ghost cultivators. Just when the Nether cave had just undergone an unusual change inside the Ghost King Palace, Yuji led the group of ghost generals and arrived one after another. Braving the strong wind, they landed a few hundred meters away from the Nether cave. All of them were bewildered. Yin qi that was as thick as ink continuously whistled out of the cave along with the strong wind. Chapter 639. Such a thick Yin energy for ghost cultivators was something that they could not wish for. However, such an abnormal change caused the hearts of all the ghost cultivators to be filled with terror. It was a type of terror towards the unknown. Yuji pursed her lips, her hair blowing in the strong wind. The group of ghost generals behind her also had bewildered gazes, not knowing what was going to happen. Shuntian Island by Changchun, who was sitting cross-legged in a large room, suddenly opened his eyes and suddenly disappeared from the room. When he reappeared, he was already standing at the edge of the 1,000-mile lake, facing the direction of the Yin Wind Valley, holding a bright moon in one hand. More accurately, it was a mirror that glowed with a bright white light. All of a sudden, the white light retracted back into the mirror. On the surface of the ancient and smooth mirror that was lined with vine patterns, the scene in front of the 9 nether cave suddenly appeared. Even the bewildered Yuji and the others appeared in the mirror. The mirror floated in front of him. Bai Changchun frowned, his eyes filled with puzzlement. He clearly did not know what was going on. Inside the 9 netherworld cave, after crossing the netherworld flame sea, the majestic underworld gate let out a deep and heart-palpitating sound. The gap of the gate gradually became larger, and the netherworld flame sea that had been burning for who knows how many years began to violently shake. The chaotic airflow caused the various skeletal statues on the huge underworld iron mountain to let out all kinds of cries. Men and women, old and young, large and small, the skeletal statues seemed to come to life, crying to someone about the misfortune of their previous life. All kinds of cries gathered in the underground space, echoing endlessly, creating a scene of chaos. If Yu Qianqiu was here, he would definitely be shocked. The underworld gate that had been closed for who knows how many years was actually slowly opening. When the majestic, thick and dark underworld gate opened to a meter wide, it stopped moving. Behind the gate there was a black light constantly rotating. Suddenly 2 white lights flashed. With 2 xiao sounds, the 2 white lights turned into 2 figures that stopped in front of the underworld gate. 2 white-robed men that looked exactly the same appeared. Their faces were also snow-white and pale, so pale that it was a bit abnormal, as if they were twin brothers. The 2 of them coldly looked around. After a long time, one of them slowly said, "Everything is normal." Another person nodded and said, "Big brother, why did the underworld emperor ask us to patrol the underworld ways of the 72 worlds?" The former shook his head and said, "It was Lady Blackpool's idea." Hearing this, the latter was taken aback and sighed. "Big brother, have you noticed that because the underworld emperor doesn't get involved in the affairs of the underworld, Lady Blackpool has been getting involved in more and more things? I'm afraid it's not a good thing." "Shut up if you don't want to get into trouble," the former warned. "This is not something you and I should worry about. Don't say such things in the future." "Got it." The latter shook his head helplessly. The former sized up his surroundings once more and said calmly, "Let's go. Let's go back." The 2 of them had just turned around when they suddenly shuddered at the same time. Their gazes burned as they stared at the netherworld gate. Of the 2 knockers on the gate of the netherworld, only one remained. One of the heaven-devouring beast heads was missing. Not only a knocker, but 2 of its fangs were also missing. No one knew where they went. After the 2 of them stared at it for a while, the latter said in bewilderment, Look at the saw marks on it. Seems that it was cut off by someone. The former was dumbfounded and speechless for a while. Then he murmured, "Who is so daring to destroy the things on the gate of the netherworld?" The latter scratched his head and said, "Logically speaking, it's impossible. This is not a place that anyone can come to. The people of the underworld can't open the gate of the netherworld from the inside without the token. And the mortals of the outside world can't pass through the netherworld fire sea and come here. Could it be the work of the ghost cultivators in the human world?" The former shook his head and said, "It shouldn't be the ghost cultivators. Once the ghost cultivators come here, their vitality will be burned away by the netherworld fire sea and they can't return to the human world. Otherwise, their souls will be destroyed and they will never be able to reincarnate. The only way for the ghost cultivators to come here is to open the gate of the netherworld and return to the underworld. Once they turn back, they will die. It's not this and it's not that. What is going on? Can't fall down by itself, can it? Even if it fell down, we should still be able to see something on the ground. There are clear saw marks on it. Could it be?" The latter suddenly stopped talking. The former turned his head and asked, "Could it be what?" The latter looked around and said softly, "Big brother, don't you think this is a little strange? Why did Madame Blackpool have to patrol the 72 underworld passages at this time? It just so happened that the gate of the netherworld here was destroyed. Could it be that someone inside was ordered to come out and do it?" The former heard this and frowned deeply. After thinking for a long time, he said in a deep voice, "Don't make wild guesses. We just need to report it truthfully. We don't need to worry about other things. Let's go back." The two of them turned into two white lights and shot into the gate of the netherworld. They instantly disappeared into the black light that rotated like a disc-shaped flowing cloud. Not long after, the gate of the netherworld let out a dull sound that made people's hearts palpitate again and slowly closed. The moment the door closed, the underground space that had been created by the chaotic images slowly returned to normal. Outside the 9th netherworld cave, the surging strong wind suddenly gradually slowed down, and the ink-like yin-chi also slowly withdrew. Very soon, everything returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Standing on the opposite cliff wall, Yuji and the group of ghost generals were looking at each other. None of them knew what was happening in the underworld cave. The group of ghost cultivators waited for a long time, but they didn't see any abnormal reaction. Yuji frowned and waved her hand, "We'll talk about it when we get back." Then the group of ghost cultivators quickly left the place. Beside the 1,000 Miles Lake on Shuntian Island, Bai Changchun waved his hand after the scene in the Mirror of Silence returned to normal. He waved his hand and kept the mirror as he looked at the sky with his hands behind his back. No one knew what he was thinking. The vast netherworld formed a world of its own. The ultimate place of birth, aging, sickness, and death was the netherworld. 20 big blood-red words were engraved on a huge black stone tablet. They could be seen clearly from afar. The stone tablet and the ancient words revealed the vicissitudes of time. They were simple and unadorned yet extraordinary. Anyone who saw it would have the urge to prostrate themselves in worship. Under the base of the stone tablet that looked like a mountain, a gate slowly opened. 2 white lights flashed and the gate slowly closed. The 2 people who appeared in front of the gate were the 2 white-robed men who appeared outside the gate to the netherworld. In front of the gate there were 2 soldiers in iron armor guarding. They were tall and sturdy, their backs were strong and their waists were strong. Their eyes were wide like copper bells as they stared at the newcomers. The 2 white-robed men each turned to face a soldier and took out a green token the size of a palm. They said, "Lu Ben Lu Pao returned to the netherworld to report." They took out the token to prove that they were not ghost cultivators from the outside world. The guards here only recognized the token. Without the token, they would be escorted to the endless dark cliff to work as laborers. One of the soldiers shouted in a booming voice, "Since you have the token, you are not allowed to stay. Leave quickly." His loud voice echoed in the surroundings. The 2 white-robed men didn't say anything else. They cupped their fists and turned into 2 white lights as they fled into the distance. The 2 of them had been flying at high speed in the darkness. It was dark everywhere. Only the red flowing lava could be seen on the ground, mixed with the black smoke. On the path separating the ground from the lava, one could see a group of people working with thick iron chains with their upper arms bare. The sun, moon, and stars could never be seen here, and the sky was always shrouded in darkness. This place was vast and boundless. Nobody knew how high the sky was or how wide the earth was. There was only endless darkness. It was because this was the underworld, a world of its own. In the vast depths that ordinary people couldn't know of, there were countless powerful overlords who carved out territories to carve out territories. Even though they had high cultivation states and powerful magic power, they had to submit to one person, the king of the entire underworld. The Emperor of the Underworld. As for the name of the Emperor of the Underworld, very few people knew it. Almost no one knew it. People only knew that he was called the Emperor of the Underworld. It was because the Emperor of the Underworld had existed for too long. All the overlords rose and fell. Only the Emperor of the Underworld existed forever in the underworld. No one could challenge his authority. Even though the Emperor of the Underworld rarely showed his power, and few people knew what he looked like, those who tried to challenge the Emperor of the Underworld were all killed. The Emperor of the Underworld was a figure that most people in the underworld could only see once in their lives. Even if they saw him, no one would know that he was the Emperor of the Underworld. The twin brothers Lu Ben and Lu Pao were very lucky. They knew what the Emperor of the Underworld looked like because they had seen the Emperor of the Underworld and because they worked in the Underworld Royal Palace. Even though their cultivation states were not high and they were just small errand boys, they had seen the Emperor of the Underworld. The towering Emperor of the Underworld Mountain. It had been standing there for countless years. Maybe it had been there since the beginning of time. It was the most sacred place in the entire underworld. Because the most honorable and holy Emperor of the Underworld lived in the magnificent Underworld Royal Palace on the peak of the mountain. On the Emperor of the Underworld Mountain, flowing lights were flying everywhere. They were fist-sized fireflies. Even though they looked ferocious, the light balls on their tails were unusually bright. It was these flying insects that illuminated the entire Emperor of the Underworld Mountain. There were 6 mountain peaks on the Emperor of the Underworld Mountain. The Emperor of the Underworld was on the highest mountain peak. The other 5 mountain peaks were in the shape of a pentagram, surrounding and protecting the most sacred Emperor of the Underworld. Of course, there was also a magnificent palace on each of the other 5 mountain peaks. The masters of those palaces were all figures whose status was second only to the Emperor of the Underworld. However, there were differences in status among the 5 masters. The master who lived on the first mountain to the left of the Emperor of the Underworld was the one with the most power and the highest status among the 5 masters, besides the Emperor of the Underworld. For many years, the Emperor of the Underworld rarely showed up and interfered with anything. Most of the affairs were handled by this master. Lu Ben and Lu Pao landed on this mountain peak. To be exact, they landed outside the gate of the palace on the mountain peak. Even though they worked in the Emperor of the Underworld, they didn't dare to trespass this palace. The Dark Palace of Madame He Qi. Chapter 640. In front of the Grand Palace Gate, there were 2 rows of soldiers standing guard. All of them wore black iron armor. The strangest thing was that everyone wore a black iron mask on their faces. The mask was hideous and terrifying like a demon. The indifferent gaze from the 2 holes made people shudder. It was Lu Ben's first time here, but he knew that these black-armored soldiers were soldiers transferred from the Onyx Army. The Onyx Army was a powerful army that terrified the people of the underworld. They were Madame Blackpool's personal guards. Many large fireflies climbed on the palace gate, illuminating the scene in front of the palace gate clearly. However, it also showed the oppressive atmosphere in front of the palace gate. A heavily armored general stood in the middle of the palace gate. His gaze behind the mask seemed to be real as he sized up the 2. The eldest of the twins, Lu Ben, was obviously not here for the first time. He nodded at his younger brother, Lu Ben. The latter took out a green token and gave it to him. Lu Ben held the 2 tokens and said respectfully, Lu Ben, report to Madame. You come in. You stay here and wait." The general in the middle of the palace gate pointed at the 2 and moved aside to make way. Lu Ben signaled his brother to wait patiently and then walked in with large strides. The inside of the palace was spacious and grand, but it seemed deserted. There didn't seem to be a single person in sight. In the middle there was a passageway that led straight to the towering Onyx Palace. Every 10 meters there was a diamond-shaped stone pillar. The stone pillar was covered with huge fireflies, decorating the entire stone pillar into a lamp post. The path to the majestic Onyx Palace was more than 300 meters long. Although there wasn't a single person in the square, Lu Ben didn't dare to be careless. He looked straight ahead and maintained a steady pace as he walked forward. He knew that this seemingly free space was actually tight on the inside and heavily guarded. It was several times stricter than the Onyx Palace's defenses. Who knew how many people were secretly watching him? The majestic Onyx Palace was brightly lit. Lu Ben bowed and stopped under the base platform that was dozens of meters high. On top of the steps, a female official wearing a male civil official uniform looked down at him. Although she was dressed in a man's uniform, she had a pretty face and was a beauty. She said coldly, "Madam is bathing." "Wait." Then she turned and left. "Yes." Lu Ben lowered his head and stood there, not daring to move. In the back hall of the Onyx Nether Palace, there was a place covered by a black veil that was steaming hot. Behind the gauze curtain was a huge bathing pool made of black jade. The warm water in the pool carried a faint smell of sulfur. It flowed into and out of a small ditch. It was a hot spring. A naked and delicate body was soaking in the water. It was a body that was extremely alluring to men. Her plump breasts rose high and her skin was as smooth as cream. Her figure was moderately plump, and a beautiful face appeared on the surface of the water. Her head was resting on the thigh of the man behind her, and two hands were gently massaging her temples. The body that men couldn't refuse was soaking in the hot spring. 5 handsome and strong men surrounded her, not even a single strand of cloth on them. Although those alluring bodies were irresistible to men, there was no trace of impulsive desire in the eyes of these 5 men. Their expressions were cautious. 2 hands were massaging her head, and the remaining 8 hands were carefully massaging various parts of her body. The plump and ravine private parts were not left behind. The 8 hands were moving and massaging every part of her body. Resting on the thigh of the man, the beautiful face looked extremely comfortable. Her eyes were hazy and her lips were slightly open, letting out a soft moan. The gauze curtain was lifted and the female official who was outside the hall walked in. Seeing that the woman in the pool was enjoying herself, she lowered her head and waited quietly. The woman in the pool closed her eyes and said, "Fei Feng, what's the matter?" Although her words were normal, her tone was full of arrogance. The female official who was called Fei Feng said respectfully, "Madam, Lu Ben, who was patrolling the 72 world passages, has returned to report. He is waiting outside the hall." The woman in the pool softly nodded and slightly raised her hand. The 5 massaging men immediately stopped. The 5 men gently carried the naked body out of the hot spring and put her down on the shore. Immediately, someone brought a towel to dry the water droplets on her body. Another person brought a black palace gauze dress and helped her put it on. The black gauze curtain was lifted, and a beautiful woman wearing a black palace gauze dress walked out. Her face was so cold that no expression could be seen on it. She had an extremely noble temperament, which was completely different from her appearance in the hot spring. Dragging a 3-meter-long skirt, she walked to the main hall and gently sat on the seat of honor. Her phoenix eyes coldly looked outside the hall. This was the famous Madame He Qi in the netherworld. The female official Fei Feng quickly led Lu Ben in. Lu Ben walked to the hall and knelt down. He did not dare to raise his head and reported the results of the inspection in detail. After listening to him expressionlessly, Madame He Qi raised her hand, and Fei Feng quickly led Lu Ben out. From the beginning to the end, Madame He Qi didn't say a word to Lu Ben. In the cornucopia, Yu Qianzhou's stall had been open for a whole day. Except for Yan Zhuixing, no one asked about it. Ziyi waited excitedly for a long time, but as she waited, she became listless. She did not have the patience to do this business that had no customers anymore. In the end, she pulled Furong and ran back. After a whole day, Yu Qianzhou knew that there was no point in continuing to set up the stall. With such a high price, it was estimated that no one would buy it anymore. What made him suspicious was that it was Yan Zhuixing and his men who bought a large amount of 7-star blood orchids from the treasure tower. He packed up the stall and returned to the Wen family's shop. Nongzhu called him up from the window on the top floor. With a dark face, Yu Qianzhou turned a deaf ear and went back to his room. Sometimes when you were unhappy, you needed to show it and let others know that you were unhappy. Otherwise, others would easily make you unhappy again in the future. The 3 people on the top floor looked at each other. When Lan Feng smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that he is still angry. He is giving us a hard time. This guy has a problem. I will go and have a look." Nongzhu swaggered down the stairs. Ziyi and Furong were in the room and continued to fiddle with the things they bought. When Yu Qianchou came in and looked at the room that had almost become a warehouse, he said to Zi with a dark face, "Go back to your room." Zi naturally wanted to oppose him, but when she saw that Yu Qianchou seemed to be really unhappy, he stuck out his bright red tongue at Furong, threw away the things in his hands and quickly left. Furong looked at Yu Qianchou weakly and said, "Are you unhappy? Did I make you angry?" Yu Qianchou turned around and bolted the door and window. With a dark face he nodded and said, "Yes, you made me unhappy." Furong immediately became nervous. She put down the things in her hands and whispered, "What did I do wrong? I will definitely change." "Well, you haven't let me touch you for a long time. This is your biggest mistake." Yu Qianchou walked behind her and suddenly laughed. He put his arms around her waist and slid one of his hands directly into her collar. Furong immediately let out a cry of surprise. The couple rolled on the bed and made love. Nongzhu came down and met Zi, who was running away. They talked casually for a while. Zi told her that Yu Qianchou was angry. Nongzhu waved her hand disapprovingly and asked Zi to go back first. She still swaggered to the door of Yu Qianchou's room. She pushed the door but found it was bolted. When she was about to use her divine sense to have a look, Yu Qianchou's roar suddenly came from inside, "Get out of my way. Don't ruin my plan." Then came the messy voice. Nongzhu was stunned and muttered awkwardly, "What bad luck." She slapped the door heavily and shouted, "When you are done, come up here. I have something to tell you." Then she turned around and went back. After returning upstairs, when Lanfeng saw that he looked strange and asked, "How is it?" "Wait a little longer. He is busy." Nongzhu could only say so. When Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and were curious about what Yu Qianchou was busy with, they quickly released their divine sense to check downstairs. With their cultivation, this distance was really nothing. They were shocked when they saw it. Their divine sense shrank back as if they were escaping. When Lanfeng looked embarrassed and didn't say a word, Lu Yanqing bit her teeth behind the green veil and blushed. Fortunately, the green veil blocked it and others couldn't see it. No matter how high their cultivation was, it was not used to peep at others. Nongzhu looked at the slightly shocked reaction of the two and laughed like a thief. She said, "I can't help it. This guy is used to being shameless. He doesn't care about the occasion. It's not the first time I've met him. You just have to get used to it." They waited for a long time. When Yu Qianchou came, he looked comfortable in the face of the three people who were a little unnatural. He asked as if nothing had happened, "What can I do for you three seniors?" Fortunately, Nongzhu was also thick-skinned. Seeing that he didn't care, she was even more unconcerned. She asked, "How many 7-star blood orchids do you have?" "What?" Yu Qianchou asked with a vigilant face. "You want my things again?" Nongzhu's words blocked Nongzhu's words. These words made the three people a little embarrassed. Yes, it was true that they wanted his things again. As the person involved, Lu Yanqing said, "Yu Qianchou, I want to buy a few 7-star blood orchids to study their medicinal properties, but your price is too high. I can't afford that much money. Can you make it cheaper?" She couldn't say it for free. Yu Qianchou looked at her suspiciously. His eyes flashed and he said, "Senior Lu, the person who bought a lot of 7-star blood orchids in Treasure Tower?" Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng also looked at Lu Yanqing when they heard this. The latter immediately shook her head and said, "You misunderstood. I didn't buy anything from Treasure Tower. I just thought of it when I saw you buying a lot." Yu Qianchou thought for a moment and said, "When I sell things, I only increase the price. I never do anything like reduce the price. Otherwise, I don't sell at all." As soon as these words came out, when Lanfeng's face didn't look good, Nongzhu immediately shouted, "Yu Qianchou, don't go too far. It's already a great honor for the master of Lingfang Valley to ask for your help. Don't get greedy for money." Chapter 641. Yu Qianchou rolled his eyes and said, "Why are you in such a hurry? Did I say I want money?" Ignoring Nongzhu's astonishment, he asked Lu Yanqing, "Senior Lu, how many do you need?" They were stunned by him. When Lanfeng's eyes were full of praise and he nodded slightly, Lu Yanqing said with some embarrassment, "How can I ask for your things for free? You use them to make money." Yu Qianchou waved his hand generously and said, "I didn't say I would give them to you for free." When Lanfeng and Nongzhu's faces darkened at the same time, Lu Yanqing was speechless. She felt embarrassed just now. It turned out that it was not for free. She asked in an unnatural tone, "What are your conditions?" Yu Qianzhou ignored Wen Lanfeng and Nongzhu's murderous eyes and said, "Do me a favor. Help me take 2 people to your Lingfang Valley and temporarily protect their safety." When Lanfeng and Nongzhu were slightly stunned, Lu Yanqing asked curiously, "Which 2 people? You might as well tell me first. If it's suitable, I can promise you." "It's suitable. It's most suitable for them to go to your place because they are 2 women." Yu Qianzhou smiled somewhat helplessly and said, "One of them is Yi Kun who lives here. And the other one? Yan Yu, the proprietress of Sleeping Spring House. Help me take them away." When Lanfeng was finally relieved when he heard that it was 2 women. But he asked curiously, "Yi Kun is reasonable. What's the relationship between you and Yan Yu? Why do you want to take her away?" Yu Qianzhou shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Niu Yid has something to do and left. I was entrusted by Niu Yid to protect her temporarily." "So that's it." When Lanfeng believed it. But Nongzhu and Lu Yanqing, who understood that Yu Qianzhou was Niu Yid, looked at each other and knew what was going on. "Okay, I promise you." Lu Yanqing nodded. "Thank you, senior." Yu Qianzhou thanked him first and then frowned. "But I'm worried that Yan Yu doesn't want to go. I'll have to trouble you to tell her that it's Niu Yid's idea. If she still doesn't want to go, you can take her away by force." "Take her away by force?" Lu Yanqing hesitated. "I know you may not want to do that." Yu Qianzhou turned to look at Wen Lanfeng and said, "I wonder if Senior Wen can help me escort them to Spirit Fong Valley." Nongzhu was speechless. This guy really knows how to pick people. Wen Lanfeng is 100% willing to go to Lingfang Valley, let alone with such a high-sounding reason. Qianzhou was a bit used to say US, but he seems he is arranging his planning his funeral. Sure enough, Wen Lanfeng's eyes lit up, but he still found a way out of this embarrassing situation. He said with a smile, "It's not impossible for me to help you. The key is how many 7-star blood orchids you are willing to give me." "That's not a problem." Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and asked Lu Yanqing, "Senior, how many do you want?" Lu Yanqing asked hesitantly, "How about 5? If you can't, I can give you less." She did want 5 stalks, but when she thought that 1 stalk was worth 200 million, 5 stalks would be 1 billion high-grade spirit stones. Compared to protecting 2 people, this price was too cheap for her. 10. Yu Qianzhou didn't reply to Lu Yanqing, but he said to Wen Lanfeng, "What do you think about giving 10 7-star blood orchids to Senior Lu?" Lu Yanqing was a bit angry. It was her business. Why did he always bring Wen Lanfeng into it? Wen Lanfeng glanced at Lu Yanqing and said, "Don't ask me about it. You ask her." Nongzhu knew what they were thinking and immediately interrupted, All right. It's settled." "Good." Yu Qianzhou readily agreed. He took out 10 pots of 7-star blood orchids from his storage bag on the spot and placed them on the ground. Lu Yanqing saw that things were like this and there was nothing to do. He put away the 10 pots of blood orchids. After the handover, Yu Qianzhou said to Nongzhu, "You'd better take Furong and Zi back as soon as possible. It may not be peaceful here recently. Don't worry about me. I have a trump card to deal with it." Nongzhu laughed for a while and taught him a lesson. "You'd better take care of yourself. This time you made Hu Changsho lose face in front of all the heroes in the world. He will settle accounts with you sooner or later. Be careful." Seeing that he was so confident, Yu Qianzhou was silent for a little and then said to the 3, "I won't bother you anymore. I have something to do. I have to go to the Ice Palace's shop." Nongzhu exclaimed, "What are you going to do there? The hatred of the second disciple of the Ice Palace has always been on your head. Do you want to die?" "Humph." Yu Qianzhou said arrogantly, "Although his cultivation is high, I'm afraid it's not so easy to kill me." "Don't worry. He can't kill me." Then he turned around and left. "Don't be so arrogant. Careful." Nongzhu shouted from behind. In the main hall of the Dark Nether Palace, the noble and cold Lady Blackpool walked slowly in the hall with her long dress trailing behind her. Her eyes were flickering for a long time. Suddenly she waved her sleeve and turned into a ball of black light. She flew out of the palace and directly flew to the highest peak protected by the 5 peaks. On the roof of the ancient, magnificent, sacred and mysterious Dark Nether Palace, a dozen people suddenly appeared. They stared at the black light in the sky and their expressions changed. They looked at each other and disappeared again without saying a word. The black light seemed to have found the right direction. It flashed toward the back palace of the Dark Nether Palace and directly shot toward a small building surrounded by the deep wood forest. Just as it was about to break through the door of the small building, a flash of silver lightning directly repelled the black light with a bang. The black light appeared and Lady Blackpool staggered back for a dozen steps. She didn't stop until she reached a tree trunk in the deep wood forest. Lady Blackpool frowned and yelled harshly, "Qianjun, how dare you attack me?" A silver light flashed in front of the building. A middle-aged man wearing silver armor, with long hair flying in the wind and stubble all over his face showed up. He stared at her indifferently and said, "Blackpool, this is not a place for you to behave atrociously. Don't you know where this place is? You can't trespass without permission." Lady Blackpool gritted her teeth and said with resentment in her eyes, "I will go wherever I want. It's not up to you, a servant. Get out of my way. I want to see the Emperor of the Underworld." The middle-aged man called Qianjun said emotionlessly, "The Emperor of the Underworld is painting and can't be disturbed. I advise you to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame me, a servant, for kicking you out of the Dark Nether Palace." "You." Lady Blackpool didn't know what to say. She knew she was no match for Qianjun. She lifted her dress and knelt down in front of the building saying, "Blackpool is here to see the Emperor of the Underworld. I have something important to report." After a moment of silence, a nonchalant voice came out from the building, "Qianjun, let her in." His tone was gentle, making anyone who heard it feel comfortable in their heart. It was filled with a calmness that stood aloof from worldly affairs. "Yes." Qianjun bowed to the inside of the building. With a flash of silver light, he disappeared. Lady Blackpool stood up and glanced around with resentment in her eyes. She waved her hand to smooth the long tail of her dress. In the blink of an eye, she had become another noble lady. He slowly walked into the small building. The decorations in the building were elegant, without a trace of luxury. Instead, there were many ancient scrolls piled up. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, she wouldn't believe that the Emperor of the Underworld, who was famous in the Underworld, would live here. She might even think that this was the humble residence of a scholar. Lady Blackpool glanced over the scrolls piled up. A hint of disdain flashed in her eyes, but it soon disappeared. She walked up the wooden stairs to the attic. As soon as she climbed up the attic, she saw the back of a man in a thin white robe. Looking from the back, he looked like a scholar. He was writing in front of a writing desk. "Blackpool greets the Emperor of the Underworld." Lady Blackpool knelt down again. The scholar continued writing. He said without turning his head, "Blackpool, why do you need to see me so urgently?" He looked like a harmless scholar, but no one could imagine that he was the Emperor of the Underworld, the ruler of the Underworld. Madame Heiqi stood up and complained, "Emperor of the Underworld, why don't you control your subordinates? They even dared to attack me. What will happen to them in the future? They won't even take the Emperor of the Underworld seriously." The scholar let out a non-committal laugh and said, "I don't want to manage anything anymore. That's why I've delegated the authority to you guys. If you guys really don't want to, I can consider managing things again. That way you guys can have peace and quiet." Lady Blackpool's expression changed. She said with a smile, "The Emperor of the Underworld is happy and angry." It was Blackpool who didn't know his place and shouldn't have quarreled with Qianjun. The Emperor of the Underworld has worked hard for the Underworld for many years. As his subordinates, we should share the burden of the Emperor of the Underworld. We shouldn't have any complaints. I'm relieved to hear that." The scholar didn't stop writing. He dipped his brush into the ink and asked, "Why do you need to see me so urgently?" "Here's the thing. A few days ago I sent someone to check the underworld passages of the 72 worlds in the human world. They found that the gate to the underworld in one of the worlds was damaged and a knocker was stolen." Lady Blackpool said angrily, "I didn't expect someone to be so daring. He even dared to damage the gate to the underworld. The people in the human world are getting more and more daring. They obviously don't take the Emperor of the Underworld seriously." Blackpool asked the Emperor of the Underworld to send someone to punish them. The scholar unhappily snorted. The brush in his hand stopped as he coldly said, "Heiqi, how dare you to ignore my words? Did you forget my warning? Without my permission, no one from the underworld can intrude the human world. The Emperor of the Underworld is angry. The Emperor of the Underworld is angry." Lady Blackpool knelt down again with a frightened expression. She explained, Blackpool didn't let anyone intrude the human world. He just sent someone to check the passage to the underworld. Blackpool has no selfish motives. He did it for the sake of the underworld. That's why he sent 2 servants from the underworld royal palace to carry it out. I believe they wouldn't dare to disobey the order of the emperor of the underworld. Remember, the human world is the foundation of the underworld. Without my permission, no one is allowed to intrude and disturb the order of the human world. Having said that, the scholar continued writing and said, "It seems that your prestige is getting higher and higher. You can even command the servants of the underworld royal palace." Chapter 642. Though he said it casually, every word was sharp and penetrating. Madame Blackpool was frightened, not knowing if the underworld emperor was just saying it casually or if he meant it. She forced herself to smile embarrassedly. Blackpool knows his own limitations. Without the underworld emperor's favor, I wouldn't be where I am today. It's good that you understand. The scholar raised his hand and said with his back facing her, "You can leave now if you have nothing else to say." Blackpool hadn't achieved her goal yet, so she wouldn't leave willingly. She gritted her teeth and pulled off the black silk tied around her waist. She shook her shoulders slightly, and the black gauze on her royal dress slid off her shoulders, exposing her snow-white and plump body to the air. Madame Blackpool stood up slowly and walked out from the pile of black gauze, walking to the back of the scholar. She wrapped her arms around the scholar's waist and said while twisting her body, "Blackpool hasn't served the underworld emperor for a long time. Wait a moment. As you wish." The scholar chuckled, his hand didn't stop moving. Madame Blackpool uttered a happily. She tilted her head to look at the painting scroll on the desk that was about to be completed. Her pupils shrank after a quick glance. A magnificent colorful painting scroll unfolded in front of her eyes. An earth-shattering battle scene was vividly depicted on the paper. The bloody, tragic and exciting battle was depicted with the tip of the scholar's brush. Countless experts from both the immortal realm and the netherworld surrounded one person, and the person who was surrounded in the picture scroll was full of heroic spirit. He was like a god of slaughter, riding a vigorous red divine dragon into the sky and into the ground, controlling tens of thousands of golden rays as if he was invincible. Countless people were killed by him, turning into a rain of blood. In the painting, a man in white armor and a man in a golden robe had a terrifyingly high cultivation state. They were entangled with the man riding the dragon. When Madame Blackpool saw the man in white armor, her naked body stiffened a bit. She knew 6 of the 12 armored warriors behind the man in white armor. One of them was the silver-armored warrior who had defeated her in front of the small building. The man in white armor who was fighting shoulder to shoulder with the man in a golden robe was the underworld emperor himself. Isn't this the underworld emperor? Madame Blackpool stiffly reached out a white arm and pointed at the white-armored man who was fighting fiercely. The scholar replied with a non-committal, His brows were solemn and his brush did not stop moving. His strokes were fine to the point that the slightest detail could be seen, vividly reflecting the intense battle atmosphere in the painting. After a while he finally completed a section of the scroll. He exhaled softly and put the brush in his hand aside. He examined the painting with a grave expression and said, "For so many years, this scene has been haunting my mind and I can't get it out of my head. I might as well draw it so that people in the future will know about it. After all, not many people know about it anymore." He seems to be interested now. He looks back at Lady Blackpool's seductive body and raises his hand to touch her plump breasts. But Madame Blackpool seemed to be attracted by the content of the scroll. She pointed at the 12 armored warriors and asked, "Are these the 12 legendary underworld generals?" The scholar nodded slightly and said, "That's right. Unfortunately, 6 of my 12 beloved generals died in that battle. Among the remaining 6, black armor died in the war. The army of the dark underworld that you took over is his former subordinate. Now only the silver armor warrior and the other 4 are left. Silver armor warrior is my personal guard, and he has been guarding the underworld royal palace. The other 4 are the masters of the other 4 palaces on the underworld emperor mountain. They are my brothers who have followed me to conquer the world. So I have to warn you. Don't ever let me hear you call them slaves again. Otherwise, I don't mind destroying your cultivation and sending you to the endless dark sea to be a laborer." Blackpool shuddered. No wonder these 5 guys always looked down on her. They were the 12 legendary underworld generals of the underworld. But so what? The legend would be replaced one day. Blackpool, I know I was wrong. I didn't expect them to be the 12 underworld generals who follow the Emperor of the Underworld. I thought the 12 underworld generals had died a long time ago. Madame Blackpool twisted her body in the scholar's arms. She said in a wrong tone, "They know I am your woman, but they still don't treat me nicely. It is obvious that they don't respect you, Underworld Emperor." The scholar caressed her smooth buttocks and laughed. "Ignorance is not a crime. I won't pursue the past. Also, they have followed me for many years. Even if they didn't contribute much, they still worked hard. You are too young to show off your status in front of them. You should endure it. It is only a matter of face. You won't lose anything. I will listen to the Emperor of the Underworld." Lady Blackpool's naked body wriggled again. She pointed at the man in the golden robe who fought alongside the Emperor of the Underworld and asked, "Who is he? How can he have such a terrifying cultivation?" "Xianxia of the Immortal Realm." "He is the Immortal Emperor you speak of. His name is Xianxia." The scholar smiled. "Immortal Emperor?" Blackpool couldn't help but exclaim. She pointed at the man riding the dragon and asked, "Who is he? How come he forced the Emperor of the Underworld and the Immortal Emperor to fight together?" She looked at the others who were attacking the man. She didn't finish her sentence because she didn't want to embarrass the Emperor of the Underworld. The scholar gazed at the man riding the dragon on the scroll with a solemn expression. He said slowly, "He came from a place that was sealed by Xianxia and me. I still don't know how he got out of the place. I don't know his name. I have never heard of him in that place. He called himself the Myriad Swords Demonic Monarch and his cultivation state is very high. What happened next? Where is that sealed place?" Madame Blackpool asked curiously. "Pa." The scholar slapped her buttocks forcefully with one hand and pinched her chin with the other, saying, "Didn't you say you would serve me? Why do you care so much?" Lady Blackpool was bewildered. Then she undressed the scholar with a flower-like smile. The two of them fell down on the ground. Amorous feelings immediately overflowed in the small building. Madame Blackpool tried her best to flatter the scholar and tried her best to please him. After a while, the two of them hugged each other. Lady Blackpool leaned on the scholar and complained, "You asked me to maintain the order of the underworld, but the gate to the underworld has been damaged. If I don't do anything, how will the people think of me?" "What are you trying to say?" the scholar asked carelessly. "At least you should take back the ring that was stolen," Lady Blackpool said. The scholar's eyes turned cold. He glanced at her and said, "I heard that you are still longing for the blue sky, the green water, the singing birds, the fragrant flowers, the sun, the moon and the stars in the human world. It seems like the rumor is true. However, this was also human nature. She was a woman after all. Women like the feasting and bustling life and can't stand the endless darkness of the underworld." "Emperor of the Underworld, you misunderstood me. I don't know who is framing me." Lady Blackpool wiggled her body and said in a spoiled manner, "If we don't do anything and don't pursue this matter, someone might destroy the gate to the underworld in the future. It seems like you don't understand what I mean." The scholar humphed, "I'm warning you, the cycle of the heavenly Tao has its own destiny. Even Immortal Emperor Xianxia and I can't get rid of this restriction. If you really want to get rid of this restriction, don't even think about it unless you become a god. Otherwise, you will bring a great disaster to yourself in the underworld." "Become a god?" Lady Blackpool was startled and flattered. "Emperor of the Underworld, aren't you the god of the underworld? Who dares to restrict you?" "If nothing can restrict me, why would I hide in the endless darkness for so many years? There are some things that you won't understand until you reach that level." The scholar stared at the ceiling and sighed. "There is something called the cycle of the heavenly Tao. For example, the demon realm." "Demon realm?" Lady Blackpool propped up her naked upper body and asked, "Is it the demonic Tao that was rampant in the ancient times?" The scholar nodded, "Yes. You won't understand how arrogant the demon realm was if you haven't experienced it yourself, but I know it clearly. The demon realm almost suppressed the immortal realm and the underworld. But what about the retribution? The demon realm was sealed, and the demon children and grandsons who stayed in the other realms were massacred and paid a heavy price. Is the demon realm the place where you and Immortal Emperor sealed?" Lady Blackpool asked. The scholar didn't say yes or no. He continued, "Back then Xianxia and I didn't realize the cycle of the heavenly Tao. Later, because of the appearance of a pearl in the human world, the immortal realm and the underworld fought in the human world. The souls of countless living beings in the human world were destroyed, and they didn't even have the chance to reincarnate. This was the result of retribution. At that time Jean Tai and I were blinded by greed and didn't realize this. Lady Blackpool's eyes flashed as she carefully asked, "What kind of pearl could tempt you, an immortal emperor?" The scholar ignored her and continued to murmur as if he was recalling an unforgettable past. No one expected the retribution to come so fast. At this time, that thousand swords demon monarch came out of nowhere and killed people in the immortal realm and the underworld in the name of enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. Without a choice, Jean Tai and I joined forces again to protect ourselves, but we were still no match for him. We were almost trapped by a grand formation he set up. Luckily we escaped quickly. Luckily, the thousand swords demon monarch was too arrogant and fell into Jean Tai's trap. He was severely wounded and finally fell into our hands. Lady Blackpool was fascinated by the story. She didn't think that there was someone that the Emperor of Hell and Immortal Emperor couldn't defeat. How powerful was this person? However, after the thousand swords demon monarch fell, the pearl suddenly disappeared without a trace. We couldn't find it no matter how hard we tried. It was as if it was just a dramatic farce, like a dream or a dream. After waking up from the dream, Jean Tai and I looked back at the devastated human world and were shocked. We didn't know how many living beings were killed by this farce. At this time the heavenly Tao warned us. The entire human world was covered in dark clouds. Countless powerful golden thunderbolts struck and chased after Jean Tai and me. Fortunately, the two of us managed to escape and return. Chapter 643. After that incident, Jean Tai and I realized that there is an irresistible force maintaining the balance in the world. It is invisible and untouchable. No matter who it is, the demon realm, the immortal realm, the underworld, or the human world, once they break the balance they will be severely punished. The scholar looked solemn. Madame Blackpool felt her hair standing on end when she heard this. She looked out of the window and smiled unnaturally. "Don't worry, Emperor of Netherworld. It has been a long time. Everything is fine now." Fine? Who knows? Maybe it is the preparation of the final score. Once it explodes, I don't know what the consequences will be. The scholar sighed. The Great War in the human world almost killed all the living beings in the human world. It caused such a terrible consequence. It is not something that can be easily forgotten. The demon realm did evil, so Jean Tai and I punished it severely. When Jean Tai and I committed evil deeds, the myriad swords demon monarch came to punish us. Fortunately, the two of us managed to escape. Then the golden thunder fell from the sky, but we dodged it again. Madame Blackpool giggled. "Isn't it good? It means that Emperor of Netherworld is powerful enough to resist the unknown force. It can't do anything to you." "You can't say it like that. I don't want it to happen again and again. I don't want it to happen again. I hope it will be over. If there is a third time, I am afraid that the punishment will be more severe after such a long time. It won't give us any chance to escape. Maybe both the immortal realm and the underworld realm will pay the unforgivable price for their evil deeds in the human world." The scholar suddenly smiled bitterly. "I am a bit curious. If there is a final punishment, who will be the one to administer the punishment on behalf of the heaven? Will there really be a person who will administer the punishment on behalf of the heaven?" Madame Blackpool asked weakly. His eyes flickered as he thought about how he had always wanted to replace a certain someone. He faintly suspected that he would be the one to administer punishment on behalf of the heavens. Once this thought appeared, it was like a seed that began to sprout in his mind. "No one can be sure. It is just a hunch." The scholar pushed her away and stood up naked. Madame Blackpool quickly got up and helped him put on his clothes. Then she put on her clothes too. The scholar looked at her and said, "I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that you shouldn't think that the mortals in the human world are easy to bully. There is a pair of eyes in the unseen world that can see everything. Since you've already been born in the netherworld, you're a person of the netherworld. Don't think about the prosperity of the world anymore. No one can get everything they want. I can't, Kim can't, and you can't either." After saying this, the scholar walked to the desk, picked up the brush again, dipped it in ink and continued with the next part of the scroll. "Do you really think that I, Blackpool, am a 3-year-old kid? You can fool me with some nonsense." The Madam of Blackpool didn't think so, but she replied, "Blackpool will remember the Emperor of the Underworld's teachings. But what about the knocker that was stolen from the Underworld gate? Are we really going to let the gate to the Underworld break and just stand there like that?" What else can we do? The scholar continued. The gate of the netherworld has existed since ancient times. I don't know who built it, but the materials used to forge it are extremely strange. Even I don't know what they are. It's easy to break them but difficult to merge them. Once they are separated, it will be difficult to merge them again. It's said that one has to use the 3 true fire to forge it. But the people who know how to use the 3 true fire have disappeared. What else can we do? Since it's such a precious item, we can't lose it, said the Madam of Blackpool. Oh, you can tell me what you think, the scholar asked. She waited for a while, but the scholar didn't respond. She stopped writing and turned around. Just tell me what you want to say. Please forgive me. The Madam of Blackpool braced herself and said, we can send someone out to find the lost item. Emperor of the Underworld, please don't misunderstand me. I have no intention of disturbing the order of the human world. Think about it. A person who has the ability to break into the gate to the underworld must not be an ordinary mortal. The person who dared to steal the item from the gate to the underworld must have a purpose. Otherwise, who would do such a thing? What if someone uses the lost knocker to forge a treasure that will bring harm to the human world? If we ignore it, what is the difference between that and disturbing the order of the human world? The scholar seemed to change his expression. He asked with furrowed brows, can we find it? We can try. If we can't find it, then forget it. Madam of Blackpool bowed and said, if the Emperor of the Underworld agrees, I will send someone out to investigate in secret. Whether we can find it or not, we won't disturb the order of the human world. The scholar paused for a while and turned around to continue writing, saying, just this once. No matter what the result is, there is no second time. If there is a second time, you don't have to serve me anymore. Go to the boundless dark cliff and serve those laborers. This was considered as an agreement. The Madam of Blackpool was delighted. Blackpool obeys your order. I agreed to let you send someone out, but I didn't agree to let you go in person, the scholar said coldly. Madam of Blackpool's joy instantly vanished. She had tried so hard to go to the human world because she had stayed in the dim netherworld for too long. Outsiders couldn't understand how comfortable a beautiful woman like her was living in the human world. A woman's vanity couldn't be satisfied by a high cultivation state. Even if a group of men who looked like pigs were circling around her, looking at her lustfully every day, wishing they could take off her clothes, throw her on the bed and press her down, those evasive gazes could still satisfy her heart. But in this place, nobody dared to have any improper thoughts about her. They didn't even look at her lustfully, let alone say those vulgar flattering words. Nobody dared to do that because she was the woman of the Underworld Emperor. But then again, if it weren't for her beauty, the Underworld Emperor wouldn't have liked her at first sight and given her so many opportunities. Some women were used to those extravagant occasions, so it was hard for them to calm down and live a boring life day after day. One more day would make them restless. Those kinds of occasions were a fatal temptation for them. Even though she had died on such occasions in her previous life, she had finally created a chance to get some fresh air, but it was denied by the scholar's order. Madame Heiqi's heart was filled with irrepressible anger, but she didn't dare to show it. She bowed and said, as the Underworld Emperor wishes, Heiqi will leave now. The scholar hummed without turning his head. Heiqi also lost interest in staying. He walked down the small building quietly and turned into a beam of black light as he fled to the door. The brush on the painting stopped and was put aside. The scholar's face showed the imposing manner of a person who had been in a superior position for a long time. This kind of indifferent attitude was like the Underworld Emperor who had awed the underworld. He called lightly, Qianjun. A beam of silver light flashed in from outside the window. A silver-armored man with long hair appeared. He cupped his hands and greeted with an imposing manner, Underworld Emperor. What has this stupid woman been doing recently? The Underworld Emperor clasped his hands behind his back and asked. Qianjun immediately reported. Recently she has been in frequent contact with the people of the immortal world. She has also been commanding the army of Dark Underworld to suppress the underworld overlords who are ready to make trouble. In addition, she has recruited some handsome male servants. Other than that, she has been meddling in the affairs of the Underworld Royal Palace, including dispatching people from the Underworld Royal Palace to patrol the underworld ways of the 72 worlds. Should we restrict her? Don't restrict her. Let her do as she pleases. I don't think she dares to overdo it. Otherwise, I will let her know what is worse than death, the underworld emperor snorted coldly. Qianjun walked to his side and glanced at the painting on the desk, saying with furrowed brows, Emperor of the underworld, the power of the army of the dark underworld has grown very fast. Some of the older members have been purged and replaced by her trusted followers. Moreover, they have been slaughtering in the underworld, which has already made people panic. The mention of the army of dark underworld has changed their expressions. Are we going to let her continue to cause trouble? What's wrong with that? Many experts have emerged in the underworld these years. All of them are restless. Let her suppress them and get rid of those troublemakers. As the underworld emperor said this, he patted the bulging silver shoulder guard on Qianjun's shoulder, sighing emotionally, only a few of our brothers are left. We have to preserve our strength to deal with possible crises. This kind of small fight is not worth your time. We can't let you guys fail miserably. Since the death of the Black Armor Destroyer, I've had this idea. That's why I found this stupid woman. Let her cause trouble. Hehe. So that's how it is. I thought you were bewitched by her beauty. Qianjun said with a smile as he touched the painting on the desk. The other brothers are full of anger and they even want to kill that woman to wake you up. It seems that I have to inform them in advance. Even though I know I have to tell them to keep acting like this and keep losing their temper. Don't be courteous to her. Although this woman is stupid, she is not stupid. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen her to do this. Don't let her suspect anything, the underworld emperor said with a smile while looking outside the window. Life in the underworld is indeed a bit lonely. It's not a bad thing to have such a beautiful woman bewitching me. At least she makes me feel comfortable. Qianjun, do you think I'm right? Hee. Qianjun laughed heartily. He touched the 12 armored underworld generals on the painting, a hint of nostalgia flashing in his eyes. He took a deep breath and said, Underworld Emperor, do you have any other orders? I'll go find them if there's nothing else. You should have heard what I said to her. The Underworld Emperor's eyes suddenly grew deep as he said, You have experienced what happened in the human world back then. Keep an eye on that stupid woman. Don't let her do anything stupid. If the heavenly punishment comes, none of us will be able to withstand it. I'll forget about the last time she sent someone out without my permission. If she dares do it behind my back again, it's useless to keep her alive. You destroy her cultivation and throw her to the endless dark sea. You don't need to report to me in advance. Yes, Underworld Emperor. Qianjun cupped his hands and turned into a silvery light, disappearing outside the window. Chapter 644. A figure flew above the cornucopia and was stopped by more than a dozen figures when he flew to the Dirong Nation's ice palace shop. Yu Qianchou showed a baffled expression and asked, Why are you stopping me? Mu Lianqiu, who was leading the law enforcement team, gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, The cornucopia doesn't allow cultivators below the soul formation stage to fly, especially during the cornucopia meeting. Yu Qianchou, don't tell me you don't know this rule. T rule. Yu Qianchou cursed in his heart, but he said in surprise, There's such a rule? I really don't know. Mu Lianqiu's expression was dark and gloomy. He stared at Yu Qianchou in silence for a while before saying slowly, I hope there won't be a next time. Definitely. Yu Qianchou chuckled. Mu Lianqiu waved his hand and the dozen people quickly flew back. Yan Zhuixing was already standing in the backyard of the Ice Palace shop after hearing the news. He stared at Yu Qianchou in the air with a smile and said, Brother Yu, welcome. Please come down quickly for a chat. Yu Qianchou landed and cupped his hands. How would I dare not come when Brother Yan invited me? The two of them looked at each other and laughed. They were polite, but they each had their own ulterior motives. None of them were good people. Yan Zhuixing looked at the sky and said, Brother Yu is a hero no matter where he goes. Yan Zhuixing is really envious that you don't even care about the rules of the cornucopia. It's fine if you don't abide by this kind of rule that only benefits a few people, Yu Qianchou said sarcastically. Even if I abide by it, no one will say anything good about me. Brother Yu is indeed honest. Yan Zhuixing nodded and praised him. I don't have any good points, but I like to speak the truth. Yu Qianchou waved his hand without a care in the world and sternly said, Brother Yan, let's not beat around the bush. Are you buying the 7-star blood orchid or not? It's not convenient to talk here, right? Yan Zhuixing looked around and raised his hand, Please come upstairs. Yu Qianzhou glanced upstairs and knew that similar buildings had a soundproof formation. He touched his chin and said, "Is there an ambush waiting for me?" Yan Zhuixing smiled and said, "Brother Yu has Senior Wen's support. Why should I be afraid? Please." The two of them acted like old friends, smiling side by side as they went upstairs. Just as Yan Zhuixing pushed open a door, he suddenly heard a shrill scream coming from upstairs. Both of them were shocked, especially Yu Qianzhou, who quickly put up his guard. Yan Zhuixing's expression changed. He couldn't be bothered with him anymore and rushed upstairs. What the hell? Could it be a trap? Yu Qianzhou was confused. He was worried that it was a trap, but he couldn't help but rush upstairs. When he reached the top floor, he found the room where the scream came from and carefully pushed the door open. Bing Qingzi, Man Hu and Yan Zhuixing were staring at a disciple who was rolling on the ground. The three of them looked at Yu Qianzhou, who came in, but no one cared about him at this moment. There were two other disciples beside him who seemed to be panicking. Yu Qianzhou plucked up his courage and walked to Yan Zhuixing's side. The disciple rolling on the ground was emitting green smoke as if he was burning. Wrinkles gradually appeared on his face and he was aging at a visible speed. Yu Qianzhou was secretly shocked. He couldn't help asking in a low voice, "Brother Yan, what's going on? Could it be that your ice palace is enforcing some sect rules and punishing disciples?" Yan Zhuixing shook his head slightly and said solemnly, "It's the 7 treasure pills sold by the World Chamber of Commerce. There's something wrong with it." Yu Qianzhou was dazed. He knew what the problem was, so he quickly shut his mouth and pretended that he knew nothing. All of a sudden, a huge and threatening aura spread out, forcing them to take a few steps back. The temperature in the room dropped rapidly, making them feel like they were in a world of ice and snow. Bing Qingzi waved his sleeve, and the disciple rolling on the ground floated up into the air. Bing Qingzi's fingers were like the wind, shooting dozens of white light into the important acupoints of the disciple. Then he pushed out a white mist from his palm and wrapped the disciple up. Apparently he was treating the disciple. However, to everyone's surprise, the disciple's scream seemed to be even more painful. It was sharp and ear-piercing, as if he was being cut into pieces. Bing Qingzi's face was shocked. The white mist quickly retracted, and the disciple slowly landed on the ground, twitching and rolling on the ground. Everyone looked at each other in shock. What a powerful poison. It can even burn Jin Yuan. Bing Qingzi was shocked. He immediately turned around and stared at Man Hu, shouting, "What the hell is going on?" Man Hu was at a loss and said in panic, "Master, I also don't know what's going on. After I bought the elixir from the treasure tower, I came back directly." Bing Qingzi teleported to the side of the other two disciples. He grabbed their wrists and examined them. After a while, he loosened his grip and stared at Man Hu coldly. "It's the same 7 treasure elixir. Why are they fine?" When the two disciples heard that they were fine, the fear on their faces turned into relief. Master, I really don't know what's going on." Man Hu's face turned bitter. Yu Qianzhou looked at the two and found that one had just reached the core formation stage, and the other had just reached the nascent soul stage. He knew what was going on. He couldn't see the cultivation of the person on the ground, but he must have used the 7 treasure elixir to break through to the tribulation stage. Yan Zhuixing took a step forward and said with a frown, "Eldest senior brother, did you meet anyone on the way here? Could you have been replaced?" "I didn't." Man Hu recalled and said, "I know that many people covet this thing. Moreover, our ice palace got the biggest share and bought 100 of them. After I got it, I didn't stay any longer and came back directly. At most, I met someone I knew on the way and nodded to say hello. Moreover, the elixir was in the storage pouch and never left it. It's impossible for it to have been replaced." Yan Zhuixing looked at Bing Qingzi, whose eyes were flickering, and said, "That's strange. Eldest senior brother definitely wouldn't harm a fellow disciple. However, it's reasonable to say that the World Commerce Association wouldn't sell poison. Otherwise, they would be going against the whole world. No matter how powerful the World Commerce Association is, they would still be courting death. Yin Baikong wouldn't do such a stupid thing." He stared at the disciple on the ground and said, "Could it be that he was poisoned before this? Otherwise, why are they fine and only he is?" Yu Qianzhou listened to his logical analysis and was speechless. At this moment, the disciple on the ground also stopped. In just a short while, he had become an old man with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. He was unreasonably skinny and looked haggard. He stretched out his hand towards Bing Qingzi, but unfortunately he couldn't move. With 2 lines of tears on his face, he said in a hoarse voice, Ancestor, save me. Bing Qingzi walked over with an ashen face and squatted down to check his body. After a long time he stood up and sighed. He's fine now. However, his dantian is severely damaged. He can no longer cultivate in this lifetime. You two carry him away and take good care of him. The last sentence was said to the 2 disciples beside him. The 2 disciples didn't dare to hesitate and carefully carried the person away. Yu Qianzhou was a little surprised. He really couldn't tell that Bing Qingzi treated his disciples so well. However, he felt that it was a little strange. Logically speaking, those who took the fake limit-breaking pill should be dead after breaking through to the tribulation passing stage. Could it be that Qin Feng's alchemy skills were not up to par and the medicinal effect was discounted? What he didn't know was that cultivators who used the fake limit-breaking pill to break through to the tribulation passing stage would indeed be poisoned to death. However, it was also related to the amount taken. Only when the poison accumulated would it be able to kill a person. As for the disciple just now, he had only consumed a pseudo-restriction breaking pill, so he was half dead. In fact, Qin Feng's alchemy skills were already strong enough. How could an alchemist who could refine a pill with pill halo be weak? Master. Man who walked in front of Bing Qingzi and didn't know what to say. Bing Qingzi coldly glanced at Yu Qianzhou and muttered, There is still no conclusion to this matter and it needs to be investigated. I will go and see if the others have the same reaction. With that, he disappeared. As soon as Bing Qingzi left, Yu Qianzhou felt the pressure was greatly reduced. He became lively and said, I say, State Preceptor man why did you come here to join in the fun instead of being a State Preceptor? Look at what happened now. You almost killed someone. Fortunately, you didn't kill anyone or else you would have committed a great sin. You. Man who angrily said, Yu Qianzhou, don't be hypocritical here. Haven't you killed a lot of people? Do I need to be hypocritical? I admit that I have killed a lot of people. Maybe I will kill even more people. That's not right. Yu Qianzhou suddenly said suspiciously, listening to what you said, could it be that you want to kill that disciple just now? Man who almost choked to death. How could this label be randomly put on him? He immediately flew into a rage and said, I want to kill you. Are you trying to scare me? Yu Qianzhou raised his sleeves and sneered, Why don't you give it a try and see who will kill who? Brother Yu, what you are doing is a bit unkind. You are rubbing salt on the wound. After Yan Zhuixing warned Yu Qianzhou, he immediately pulled back the rioting man who and comforted him, Eldest senior brother, don't worry. Master and I both believe in you. Yu Qianzhou laughed and waved his hand, Take it as me talking too much. Anyway, it has nothing to do with me. I say, Brother Yan, are you going to buy the 7-star blood orchid or not? If not, I will leave. Buy, of course I will buy. Yan Zhuixing pressed on Man Hu's shoulder, indicating him to restrain himself. Then he turned around and asked, I wonder how many 7-star blood orchids Brother Yu has? You don't have to worry about this as long as you can afford it. Yu Qianzhou touched his nose and asked, Brother Yan, I have a question but I don't know if it is convenient for me to answer it. What do you want so many 7-star blood orchids for? He knew that it was useless to ask but he still couldn't help but want to ask. Sure enough, Yan Zhuixing said perfunctorily, We naturally have our use. Brother Yu doesn't have to worry about this. Yu Qianzhou looked him up and down and said with a smile, I heard that Brother Yan has a unique martial art. Is it related to the martial art that you are practicing to buy so many blood orchids? Chapter 645. Yan Zhuixing's eyes were slightly cold and he said in a deep voice, Brother Yu, you can eat whatever you want but you can't say whatever you want. This matter has been proven to be false. It's better not to mention hearsay again so as to avoid misunderstanding. This matter has become a big deal. I'm just curious so I asked casually. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand disapprovingly and then asked, I wonder how many blood orchids Brother Yan wants to buy? When it came to business, Yan Zhuixing didn't care about him anymore. He said sternly, It depends on whether Brother you can take care of the price. If it's cheap, buy more. If it's expensive, buy less. Since Brother Yan has spoken for the sake of old friends, I will naturally take care of the price. Yu Qianzhou touched his chin and thought for a while. The original price is 200 million upper-grade spiritual stones. If Brother Yan sincerely wants to buy, each one can be cheaper by 1,000 upper-grade spiritual stones. Man who snorted on the spot, Something worth 1 billion is cheaper by 1,000. How can you say that? Yan Zhuixing pressed his hand to him and said with a fake smile, "Brother, you really thinks highly of me. I'm indebted to you for taking care of me. To make a long story short, I want 7 blood orchids. I wonder if brother you has brought them?" Yu Qianchou smiled and said, 7 blood orchids are worth 1 billion upper-grade spiritual stones. Does brother Yan bring enough money? Yan Zhuixing knew that this guy was a sticky candy and it was meaningless to continue. So he took out 2 storage bags and handed them to him generously. Yu Qianchou took them and checked the scene. After counting them, there were indeed 1 billion upper-grade spiritual stones. It seemed that the other party had already prepared to buy 7. After putting away the storage bags, he fiddled around for a while before returning another storage bag. Here are 7,000 upper-grade spirit stones. You can count them. Yan Zhuixing didn't think it was too little. He took the bag and put it away without looking at it. Yu Qianchou chuckled and placed 7 pots of blood orchids on the ground, saying, 7 pots of blood orchids, please inspect the goods, brother Yan. The moment the 7 pots of blood orchids were placed out, Yan Zhuixing's eyes turned as cold as the stars and killing intent surged. Man Hu immediately shouted, "Yu Qianchou, are you playing with us?" "Great Imperial Advisor Man Hu, what do you mean by that?" Yu Qianchou pointed at the 7 pots of blood orchids on the ground and said in surprise, "These are genuine 7-star blood orchids. Don't you know what they are?" The 7-star blood orchid on the ground seemed to have no eyes. Dozens of slender leaves grew out of it like a pile of weeds. If it wasn't for its blood-red color and the faint smell of blood, it would be very difficult to associate it with the 7-star blood orchid. The most disgusting thing was that there was not even a shadow of an orchid. To be exact, it wasn't that he couldn't see it, but that it hadn't grown at all. Compared with the ones he sold at the stall before, it was completely a blood orchid seedling. Yan Zhuixing stared at the blood orchid on the ground and said indifferently, "The 7-star blood orchid seedling has 10 leaves. After that, it grows 1 leaf every year. After 100 years, it blossoms and bears fruit. After another 100 years, the fruit ripens and falls. These 7 pots of blood orchid are at most 30 years old. It's too different from the century-old blood orchid that brother Yu sold before." He stared at Yu Qianchou with cold eyes and said, "Brother Yu, aren't you going too far by doing this?" "Brother Yan, don't misunderstand." Yu Qianchou waved his hand repeatedly and explained, "The 10 pots of blood orchid that you saw before have been bought by someone. The rest of the goods are really not good, but these 7 pots are already considered good among the remaining ones. If brother Yan is not satisfied, you can return it. I will never say no." He didn't sincerely sell the blood orchid to Yan Zhuixing at all. This time he came purely to see if Yan Zhuixing would buy it. Therefore he made a few pots of inferior goods. It was fine if the other party didn't buy it, but he couldn't give the other party good things. He wasn't the kind of person who would leave trouble in the future just to make money. He just wanted to find an excuse to make the sale fail. Man Hu sneered, "Full of nonsense. I don't think you are sincere at all. There's no need to return it." Yan Zhuixing put away all the 7 pots of blood orchid. Man Hu immediately transmitted his voice, "8th junior brother, what are you doing? This blood orchid hasn't grown at all." Before he finished speaking, he heard Yan Zhuixing's voice transmission, "Eldest senior brother, you also know that this guy has no sincerity to sell to us. But I'm not a fool. There is a secret method in the demonic book to accelerate the blood orchid's ripening." Yu Qianchou was stunned. He didn't expect the other party to buy it even though he deliberately made things difficult for them. He faintly felt that something was wrong. He couldn't help but smile. "Brother Yan, you make me feel embarrassed. How about this? I'm also an honest person. I can't bear to see others suffer losses. You can return it first. I will definitely find you 7 pots of mature blood orchid within 3 days." Once he cheated the blood orchid back into his hands, there would be many reasons not to sell it in the future. Yan Zhuixing smiled faintly, "That's too troublesome. If you really feel embarrassed, you might as well return the spirit stones to me." "What do you mean?" Yu Qianchou was stunned. "Look at my eyes and you will understand." The faint smile on Yan Zhuixing's face turned indifferent. He said word by word, "Magic eye ecstasy." Yu Qianchou was confused by him. He didn't know what he was talking about, so he looked at his eyes subconsciously. Suddenly, the other party's cold eyes instantly turned blood red. It was extremely demonic and dazzling. The red light flashed and pierced one's heart. There was a boom in his head. Xianxia immediately felt that something was wrong. He wanted to look away, but he realized that he wasn't listening to his commands. His consciousness instantly blurred. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he was in a sea of blood. His limbs were entangled by the blood vines that extended out from the sea of blood. He couldn't move at all. King Yanjuation, you actually dared to trick me. Just you wait. Xianxia cursed. Seeing that he couldn't move his limbs, he immediately wanted to use his divine sense to contact Utopia. He wanted to teleport away and settle the score with Yanjuation later. However, what terrified him was that he couldn't use his divine sense to contact Utopia. He couldn't even circulate the quintessential essence in his body. He quickly looked around and was alarmed. How could such a boundless sea of blood appear in the treasure basin? Clearly this wasn't reality at all. Could it be that my sea of consciousness is trapped by the sea of blood? Brother Yan, let's talk nicely. There's no need to be angry over a few pots of blood orchids. As long as you let me out, I can have as many blood orchids as you want, and I'll guarantee the quality and quantity. Xianxia, who was trapped in the sea of blood, shook his head and shouted. Previously he was still cursing, but now that he realized that there was nothing he could do, he immediately gave in. In his words, a wise man doesn't fight when the odds are against him. As long as there's life, there's hope. When man who saw Yanjuation use his demonic eyes to control Xianxia, he was stunned for a moment before he immediately laughed out loud. Xianxia, I didn't expect you to have such a day. Second junior brother, you can take revenge now. Man who couldn't hear the shouts in Xianxia's sea of consciousness, but Yanjuation, whose eyes were shining with red light, could hear it. He sneered. Brother Yu, don't you think it's too late for you to say this now? Xianxia, who was trapped, immediately heard the rumbling sound coming from the sea of blood. It came from all directions, but he didn't know where it came from. He cursed the despicable and shameless beast in his heart. Sure enough, I guessed right. You've practiced some evil cultivation method. It's not too late, not too late. We can talk slowly and raise any conditions. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied. Xianxia laughed. However, his eyes were looking around in vain, trying to find a way to escape. I really want to have a good talk with you, Brother Yu. However, it will have to wait until you become my puppet. Otherwise, Brother Yu's endless tricks will make me worry. The demonic red light in Yanjuaxing's eyes suddenly brightened. His words were like a devil's voice. Xianxia, from today onwards, I, Yanjuaxing, will be your master. From today onwards, you will follow my orders. In the vast sea of blood, 7 blood snakes suddenly drilled out and hissed. They raised their slender bodies and let out a long hiss. Then they quickly broke through the blood waves and swam over. Fuck. What the hell is this? Yanjuaxing, stop right now. Otherwise, sooner or later I'll make you. Before Xianxia could finish his words, he was unable to make another sound. The heads of the 7 blood snakes became thin and drilled into his 7 orifices. Xianxia's body twisted and stopped moving. The blood vines that were binding his limbs loosened and retracted back into the sea of blood. They turned into 7 blood snakes that were connected to his 7 orifices in the sea of blood. The demonic red light in Yanjuaxing's eyes quickly disappeared. He nodded to Manhu and smiled. He's under my control. From now on he will listen to my orders. Xianxia, who was opposite him, stood there motionlessly with dull eyes. Kill him to avenge second junior brother. Manhu laughed cruelly. His smile was full of joy. Yanjuaxing frowned and quickly stood in front of him. He said in a deep voice, eldest senior brother, don't act rashly. It's not the time to kill him yet. When Lanfeng and the others must know that he's here. If we don't see him, they'll definitely come to us for revenge. Don't cause trouble for master. Manhu was startled and resentfully gave up on the action of revenge. Although he was eager for revenge, he knew that Yanjuaxing's words made sense. Now was not the time to act rashly. Master couldn't deal with Wen Lanfeng's strength. At this moment, a golden light broke through the boundless sea of blood. The sea shone brightly and a golden sun rose. The moment it rose, it immediately suppressed the surging waves of the sea of blood to the point that it couldn't move. A golden light beam shot out from the sun and shone on Xianxia's 7 orifices that were sealed by the 7 blood snakes. The 7 blood snakes turned into ashes in the blink of an eye. Xianxia's 7 orifices also began to emit black smoke. The smoke became fainter and fainter. Soon it disappeared without a trace. Xianxia's nostrils twitched. He opened his eyes and his gaze gradually became lively. As the golden light beam retracted, the entire sun suddenly erupted with a golden light. The boundless sea of blood couldn't withstand a single blow. Under the illumination of the light beam, it was like a righteous spirit looking down on the world. All demons and evil cultivators had nowhere to hide. They were all killed while wailing. The boundless sea of blood quickly rose into black smoke and dissipated. The sea of blood dissipated, revealing the vast and boundless sky of the universe, dotted with stars that would last for eternity. Chapter 646. The sea of blood in front of him suddenly turned into the stars of the universe. This kind of eternal brilliance made Xianxia somewhat dumbfounded. This was not the first time he saw this phenomenon. He remembered that the first time he saw it was in the 9th Netherworld cave. At that time he was also in a predicament. So it was not a dream last time. He looked at the endless starry sky in disbelief, and the countless stars seemed to be staring at him. This illusion disappeared slightly, and in front of him he saw Zhou Xian and Man Hu talking with confidence and composure, discussing how to play with him. Bastard. Fortunately, this old man is blessed with a good life. He actually wants to use me as a puppet. Evil demon bastard, I will eliminate the demon today. Xianxia was so angry that his teeth itched, but he did not act rashly. He first tried to circulate the true essence in his body. Normal. He then used his divine sense to connect with Utopia and it returned to normal. Man Hu stared at Xianxia and asked, Junior brother, is he really completely under your control now? Zhou Xian smiled somewhat proudly. Yes, his sea of consciousness and primordial spirit have been controlled by my devil eye. As long as it is my command he will definitely obey. But if he goes back with this stupid appearance, it is impossible for Wen Lanfeng and the others to not see some clues. I am afraid that even if he goes back alive, it will still be troublesome. Man Hu suddenly revealed a sinister expression. It is better to just kill him and end all troubles. Kill your mother. Xianxia almost jumped up to beat Man Hu, but he still endured it and continued to maintain his stupid appearance, wanting to probe the two beasts. Zhou Xian slightly frowned. Senior brother, don't be impatient. Revenge is not urgent. Although my cultivation is not enough to control someone with a higher cultivation than me, Xianxia's cultivation is more or less the same as mine. After being hit by my demon eye ecstasy, he has become my puppet. Even with the help of a late soul transformation expert, he cannot escape my control. Without a way to remove it, it is difficult to break the demon barrier in the sea of consciousness. As long as he is still under my control, it is easy to kill him. Even if I ask him to commit suicide, he will do it. Demon eye ecstasy soul involuntarily. As long as I awaken the control of his consciousness, even if I let him go, he will look the same as usual. It will be very difficult for others to notice anything. Demon eye? Xianxia was shocked. He didn't expect there to be such an evil spell. I didn't expect the demon eye to be so powerful. Man Hu exclaimed in surprise and said with some joy, so we can place an informer around Wen Lanfeng. He can be of great help at the critical moment. That's one of the reasons why I haven't killed him yet. Zhou Xian stared at Xianxia and sneered, this brat has always been elusive. Who knows how many secrets he is hiding? I have to interrogate him properly. Not bad. Man Hu clapped his hands and praised, just in time to ask him where he got so many 7-star blood orchids. Seeing that he had figured it out, Zhou Xian was finally relieved. He stared at Xianxia and asked, Xianxia, let me ask you, where are the blood orchids that you previously sold? Xianxia was happy in his heart and replied with a dumbfounded expression, I sold them all. Why is the answer the same as before? Zhou Xian frowned slightly and felt that something was wrong. He didn't believe that this guy who was full of nonsense was telling the truth. He paused and asked, who did you sell it to? Niuyid. Xianxia replied. Zhou Xian and Man Hu looked at each other. Both of them had a lingering fear of Niuyid, this unfathomable and mysterious figure. Zhou Xian asked, why did he buy the 7-star blood orchids? He said that he can't let the 7-star blood orchids fall into the hands of that little bastard called Zhou Xian. Otherwise he will harm the world sooner or later. Xianxia replied. The two of them didn't care about this scolding. Instead they felt a chill down their spine. It seemed that Niuyid had really seen through Zhou Xian's background. He could even see that he needed the 7-star blood orchids. Yan Zhuixing immediately asked, "Do you know who that Niu Yud is?" "An immortal from the immortal world," Yu Qianzhou said ignorantly. "An immortal?" The two of them couldn't help but exclaim. Yan Zhuixing asked again, "How do you know that he is an immortal from the immortal world?" Yu Qianzhou replied, "I accidentally summoned him from the immortal world at the immortal ascension stage in the fog forest." The two of them looked at each other. They had heard Bing Qingzi say that there might be an immortal ascension stage in the fog forest, but they didn't expect it to be true. Man who couldn't help but ask, "Yu Qianzhou, is the treasure left behind by the myriad swords demon monarch real?" "It's fake," Yu Qianzhou replied casually. Who knew that this casual remark of his would cause trouble? Yan Zhuixing squinted his eyes and stared at Yu Qianzhou. He said word by word in a deep voice, "Yu Qianzhou, I order you to commit suicide immediately to atone for your crime." Man who looked at Yan Zhuixing in astonishment. He didn't know why Yan Zhuixing would suddenly say something like this. Yan Zhuixing was just counting the benefits of keeping Yu Qianzhou alive. Now that Yu Qianzhou is of great use, why does he want to kill Yu Qianzhou? What he didn't know was that the person controlled by the demonic eye would only listen to one person. Logically speaking, in such a muddle-headed state, it was impossible for Yan Zhuixing to reply to him. Naturally, it aroused Yan Zhuixing's suspicion. However, Yan Zhuixing wasn't so sure. After all, he didn't have much experience in using it. He didn't know if there was a problem somewhere, so he wanted to give it a try. Yu Qianzhou cursed in his heart. He thought about it a few times, but he couldn't figure out where the problem was. Could it be that his reply to man who gave him away? He was a little depressed. He wanted to play the fool and make use of the two of them, but it seemed like he couldn't make use of them. "Yes," Yu Qianzhou replied in a daze. He took out a big black saber from his storage bag. He raised the saber up high as if he was really going to commit suicide to atone for his crime. Suddenly Yan Zhuixing's eyes opened wide and he quickly retreated. Yu Qianzhou raised his saber and chased after Yan Zhuixing. "Dog, hand over your life." Everything happened so suddenly. One was prepared and the other was ambushed. Yan Zhuixing couldn't dodge in time and was about to be slashed. As he retreated, he suddenly clapped his hands and shouted, "Demonic charm, doppelganger." Swoosh swoosh swoosh. In a hurry, Yan Zhuixing instantly split into three, and the three Yan Zhuixing scattered like ghosts. Yu Qianzhou's eyes blurred. He was clearly about to slash his opponent, but who knew that his opponent would suddenly separate like three wisps of smoke? His sneak attack failed and he didn't know which one to chase. The three figures gathered behind him, and Yan Zhuixing's original body was restored in an instant. Yu Qianzhou's intuition sensed the opponent's position, and he swept his saber behind him. At almost the same time, Yan Zhuixing waved his fist that was surrounded by killing intent and shot over. He shouted, "Little devil fist." Man who was startled by the sudden change, immediately reacted after the two of them clashed. A cold light flashed out from his storage bag and shot towards Yu Qianzhou without hesitation. The flying sword was faster than Yan Zhuixing's fist, and Yu Qianzhou spat on it. He changed the direction of his saber and slashed towards the flying sword. Dang! The flying sword was cut into two like tofu. The saber turned again to deal with the incoming fist, but it seemed to be a bit late. The black fiendish fist smashed onto the side of the saber. Bang! Yu Qianzhou's palm was numb from the impact, and he had no choice but to let go of the saber in his hand. Otherwise, he would definitely be injured if he forcefully held onto the saber with such a powerful force. Black pieces fluttered in the air, and the big black saber was actually shattered into hundreds of pieces by Yan Zhuixing's fist. Yu Qianzhou was shocked. He didn't expect Yan Zhuixing's fist to be so powerful. Seeing that Yan Zhuixing no longer had the saber in his hand, man who shouted, "Profound Yin palm." He teleported over and waved his palm towards Yan Zhuixing's head. Although it wasn't as powerful as his master's profound Yin palm, as long as it hit Yu Qianzhou, the cold poison would be enough to make Yu Qianzhou lose the ability to resist. Devil's Claw. Yan Zhuixing's fist instantly turned into 5 malevolent claws, and each of his fingers instantly became thin and sharp. With 5 red rays, the claws whizzed over and joined hands with Manhu to attack from the left and right. The three of them soared into the air and quickly exchanged blows. If Yu Qianzhou dared to be arrogant, he naturally had the ability to be arrogant. He wasn't someone to be trifled with, so he naturally had his own trump card. The word, explode, popped out from his mouth. In that instant, Yan Zhuixing's pupils shrank as he sensed the terrifying aura that he had seen in the saber drawing assembly. While he was still in the air, he shouted, "Go!" The 5 claws grabbed onto Manhu's arm and burst forth with a powerful force, pushing him away. Yan Zhuixing then rapidly retreated in the air with his arms spread out like a bat. The instant Manhu's body smashed through the wall, he personally witnessed the fragments of the big black saber explode on the ground. Intense black flames engulfed Yan Zhuixing in a sea of flames, and a cold and terrifying aura surged over Manhu quivered from the cold and quickly teleported far away into the air. He exclaimed to the people below, "Junior brother." Yu Qianzhou didn't dare to let the power of the black flames spread too far, or it would definitely arouse the suspicion of Niu Yud and him. After the black flames exploded, he quickly retracted them back into his body. The instant he leapt into the air, although the entire shop wasn't on fire, it turned a deathly gray color and collapsed. He directly broke through the roof and leapt into the air. There was an uproar on the street. The people nearby all felt a sudden terrifying cold aura, but it disappeared in the blink of an eye, as though it was an illusion. Such a huge commotion immediately attracted the law enforcement guards led by Mu Lianqiu. They surrounded Yu Qianzhou, who was floating in the air. Mu Lianqiu shouted angrily, "Yu Qianzhou, how do you explain this?" Yu Qianzhou ignored the law enforcement guards surrounding him and glanced coldly at Manhu. Then he looked around and gathered his quintessential essence to speak loudly, "Yan Zhuixing, I know you are fine. Why are you hiding? Everyone didn't go all out just now. If you have the ability, come out and fight again. Let me have a taste of your demonic technique." His voice resounded in the surroundings. There was no reaction from Yan Zhuixing, but more and more spectators gathered on the ground. Seeing how condescending he was, Mu Lianqiu immediately said furiously, "Yu Qianzhou, what do you think the World Chamber of Commerce is? It's none of your business. If you don't want to die, then get out of my way." Yu Qianzhou didn't even look at him. He shook his sleeves and green lights flashed out from his sleeves like floating clouds and flowing water. Countless green flying swords circled around his body and dispersed. Chapter 647. The law enforcement guards surrounding Yu Qianzhou were forced away by the ever-growing group of flying swords. Mu Lianqiu's expression was gloomy, and he wished for nothing more than to take down Yu Qianzhou on the spot. However, he knew clearly in his heart that the targets of law enforcement and punishment didn't include people with deep backgrounds like Yu Qianzhou. It was fine to frighten ordinary cultivators, but once he acted rashly, the consequences weren't something he could bear. There were some things that everyone was well aware of, and it was important to give each other face. However, people like Yu Qianzhou did not follow common sense at all. He caused trouble again and again, treating cornucopia's rules like **T. The strict image that Mu Lianqiu had painstakingly built up for the world commerce was destroyed in one day. He unscrupulously tore down the shameful cover of strict law enforcement, allowing everyone to see the ugly face behind it. What rules? They were just bullying the weak. When encountering a powerful person, they immediately revealed their true colors. Yu Qianzhou had always scoffed at this broken rule, let alone now. A total of 2,000 green flying swords hovered in the air. The scene was truly spectacular. No one present had seen a person controlling so many flying swords at the same time. They were all dumbfounded and sighed inwardly. The number 1 expert below the soul formation stage was indeed not just for show. Actually, this was not the upper limit of what Yu Qianzhou could control. He had tried it at the Immortal Ascension platform. With his current early-stage tribulation passing cultivation, he could control 3,000 flying swords at the same time. However, it seemed that it was not stable to control it in a fight. He could only control 2,000 flying swords with ease. The brilliant green flying swords hovered in the air, forming a huge green halo. Yu Qianzhou stood in the center with a murderous aura as he swept his gaze around. He was really angry. His robe swelled up without any wind and fluttered in the wind. He did not restrain his murderous aura at all. He had almost died today. Yan Zhuixing's demonic technique was a great taboo to him. If he did not get rid of him before he matured, Yu Qianzhou would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. The enmity between the two sides was very difficult to reconcile. Sooner or later they would have to fight to the death. If he was allowed to grow, it was needless to say who would be the unlucky one. What made Yu Qianzhou the most unwilling was that the 7 pots of blood orchids were very likely to be of great benefit to Yan Zhuixing's demonic arts. Yet he had to personally give them to him. Inside the Onyx Palace, a black light flashed and turned into the cold and noble Lady Blackpool. However, there was an irrepressible anger in that noble temperament. Even though she was suppressing it, others could still see that she was in a bad mood. Dragging her long skirt, she climbed up to the back seat in the middle of the hall. Her phoenix eyes glanced at the maids on both sides who didn't dare to come close, and she knew that she was a little angry. After slowly calming himself down, he called out, "Fei Feng." Maid Fei Feng walked to the back seat and bowed. "Madam, what can I do for you?" Madam Blackpool said indifferently, "The Underworld Emperor asked me to send someone to the human world to find the lost door knocker. Who do you think should go?" She had no hope of getting out, so she didn't want to get involved in this matter. However, the Underworld Emperor ordered that even if she had to deal with it, she had to pretend to do it. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain to the Underworld Emperor when he asked. Fei Feng bowed and said, "Since it is the Underworld Emperor's order, we should send a smart and capable person. Any commander of the army of the Dark Underworld can be qualified for this position." Enough. Madam Blackpool suddenly slammed her palm on the armrest of the back seat. No one knew where the anger came from. Fei Feng knelt down and kowtowed in fear, saying, "Fei Feng said something wrong. Please forgive me, madam." Madam Blackpool was about to say something disrespectful, but she forcefully suppressed it. She looked around, wondering if there were spies of the Underworld Palace here. She put on a smile and said, "You didn't say anything wrong. But the army of the Dark Underworld is responsible for suppressing the riots and maintaining the stability of the underworld. It can't be mobilized easily. Otherwise, if something unexpected happens, I can't explain to the Underworld Emperor." Yes. I didn't consider it thoroughly," Fei Feng said while kowtowing. But she murmured in her mind that there were tens of thousands of commanders in the army of the Dark Underworld. What could mobilizing one commander do? Madam Blackpool said with a smile. "Moreover, it is not necessary to mobilize a commander in the human world. Where's Lu Mei? I haven't seen him for a long time." "Lu Mei offended Madam last time and was sent to prison by Madam," Fei Feng reminded her carefully. It is just a small matter. He has been punished. Let him out." Madam Blackpool waved her hand and said, "Tell him to come see me as soon as possible." Fei Feng took the order and left. Soon she came back with a tall and thin man with green eyebrows and a pale face. As soon as the man stepped into the palace gate, he ran to the back of the palace and kneeled down, crying, "Madam, your servant knows his sin, your servant knows his sin, your servant should not have made Madam unhappy." His voice was sharp and shrill, there was a hint of an eunuch's voice. "All right. Don't cry. I forgive you. Come here." Madam Blackpool waved her hand with a smile. Lu Mei immediately crawled to the back seat. He hugged her legs and massaged them gently. He looked up at her and smiled through his tears. "Madam, thank you for your forgiveness. Madam, you don't know. I feel worse than death if I don't see you for a day. If you punish me again, please don't put me in prison again. I can't bear the pain of not seeing you. I would rather die at your feet." Madam Blackpool was amused by him and laughed. The haze in her heart disappeared. She then nodded and smiled. "I understand your loyalty. That is why I have a good task for you to do as a reward for your loyalty." "No, I am not going anywhere. I would rather die than leave Madam." Lu Mei hugged Madam Blackpool's legs and refused to let go. Madam Blackpool's phoenix eyes immediately turned cold. She said indifferently, "You dare to disobey me?" Lu Mei was startled. He let go of her legs and kowtowed repeatedly. "Madam, if you have any orders, just let me know. I will die 10,000 times for you." Flattery sounded nice, but it was impossible for him not to be afraid of death. How could a shameless person not be afraid of death in order to survive? "That's right." Madam Blackpool recovered her smile and said, "A knocker and 2 animal teeth on the door ornaments of one of the underworld gates in the 72 world passages were stolen. The Emperor of the Underworld ordered me to send someone to the human world to find them. It is such a good task. I think only your loyalty can reassure me. Lu Mei, you won't disappoint me, will you?" Hearing this, Fei Feng glanced at him secretly but didn't dare to say anything. She didn't know what Madam Blackpool was thinking. How could she let a flattering man carry out the task ordered by the Emperor of the Underworld? She should at least find someone with a high cultivation state. Lu Mei looked up at Madam Blackpool in disbelief. It was indeed a good task. Who didn't want to go back to the human world after living in the dark underworld? But he knew what he was capable of. Besides, he had accompanied Madame for a long time, and he knew that Madame Blackpool wanted to travel to the human world. How could she give such a good opportunity to him? He couldn't figure it out. What? You don't want to do it? Madame Blackpool asked in a deep voice. No. Lu Mei waved his hands and said gingerly, but my cultivation state is too low. I am only in the middle stage of the underworld warrior. I am afraid that I will ruin the Emperor of the Underworld's plan and implicate Madame. The cultivation states in the underworld were divided into 4 levels: the Underworld Warrior, the Underworld Saint, the Underworld Venerable, and the Underworld Emperor. Each level was further divided into 3 levels. The top ghost practitioners in the human world, even if they had the cultivation state of the Ghost Saint, were just mediocre in the underworld. They were at most the outstanding ghosts, but they couldn't form the underworld body. Once they formed the underworld body, they could travel between the 3 realms. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to expose themselves under the scorching sun. There was a big difference between the 2 levels. You worry too much about this. Madame Blackpool said disdainfully, in the human world the top swordsmen are only in the last stage of the Huashan realm. In fact, they are not even in the early stage of the underworld warrior. You are in the middle stage of the underworld warrior, so you can be invincible in the human world. What is there to be afraid of? Lu Mei's eyes brightened. How could he forget this after staying in the underworld for so long? His cultivation state in the underworld was not very high, but in the human world he was definitely a top-notch swordsman. He said with a silly smile, I am stupid. Thank you for reminding me, Madam. I will try my best to complete the task assigned by Madam. Madame Blackpool glanced at him enviously and sent a message to him secretly, you should take care of your business first. After that, I will allow you to stay in the human world for half a month. Remember, write down anything new and tell me about it when you come back. After sending the message, she said seriously, go find Fei Feng. She will tell you where you are going. After receiving the secret decree, Lu Mei kowtowed with a smile and said, I will try my best to complete the task assigned by Madam. Then he left. In the hall of the Ghost King in the chilly Wind Valley, Yu Ji and the others still had not figured out what happened in the 9th Netherworld cave last time. Seeing that there was no negative reaction after the incident, they gradually forgot about it. But they still had some doubts. But just as the ghost generals gathered to discuss the matter, outside the Ghost King Hall, a fierce wind suddenly blew violently again, causing the outside world to darken. Everyone was shocked. Yu Ji dashed out first and led a group of ghost generals to the outside of the 9th Netherworld cave again. However, just as everyone arrived, the violent and angry wind suddenly returned to normal, causing the group of people to scratch their heads in confusion. In the deepest part of the 9th Netherworld cave, behind the 1-meter-wide Netherworld gate, a green light flashed. Lu Mei suddenly appeared and looked around. After the Netherworld gate behind him closed slowly, he turned around and stared at the place where one of the knockers was missing. He laughed in a high-pitched voice, How dare you? It seems that the cultivators in the human world are tired of living. How dare you steal the thing on the Netherworld gate? Today I will let you know my power when I come to the human world. Not only did he know how to flatter and boast, but he also had a serious and responsible attitude when doing things. Otherwise, he would not be able to survive under Madame Blackpool's feet until now. Starting from the Netherworld gate, he looked for clues of the theft bit by bit. However, he did not find anything special until he passed through the Netherworld Fire Sea and landed at the entrance of the cave.